Good morning and welcome to the curriculum meeting for August 30th. I would like to call this meeting to order with the approval of the agenda.
Madam Chairman, I'd like to make adjustment to the agenda. Items 7 and 8, I would like to move up to after item 2 and adapting item 8, House Bill 986 to informational and possible action.
Okay? If there are no other recommendations, I will accept a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
So moved.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we will begin with the curriculum committee meeting minutes for July 24th. I trust everyone's had a chance to look over those minutes. Are there any recommendations for edits?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve the minutes as submitted.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that passes 3-0. And we will now move straight into IB expansion.
Over the last several years, we obviously have been looking at the IB program and what we can do in Union County Public Schools to make sure that all students have access to the IB program throughout the district. The current program is at Marvin Ridge High School, which is on one end of our county, and that sort of begged the question of, are we really accessing our students accessing that program from all over the district? And so this past year, what we asked Marvin Ridge High School to do was to go out and speak at all the high schools. Donna Cook, the principal, as well as Miss Arendt, the IB coordinator, ended up doing a roadshow across the district, and just as an informational, this is what the program is. These are the requirements for the program, and what they found is there was number one, a great turnout at the schools that they went to of students that were interested, at least finding out information. And this past year, we worked to try and to take away some of the barriers that may not allow students to have access to that program. And that was transportation was the primary barrier. And so with the leadership of Dr. Houlihan and making commitment to let's provide transportation for those that are accepted into the program, that want to be in the program. And with that roadshow, we ended up having, for the first time, 10 students from across the district that were interested in taking part in the IB program and being accepted into that program. Of that 10, currently we have 2 students that said we would like Union County Public Schools to provide the transportation. The other 8 are providing their own transportation and chose to do so. And so with that, we also realized that even some areas of our district may be so far away with the traffic and the congestion and having to get up at the wee hours of the morning in order to make it to the program really takes a lot of commitment. So we began asking around, would any schools like to look at the IB program, or would that be appropriate for their schools? And Porter Ridge High School started dialogue with us about the opportunity of looking into whether or not the IB program would be something for their school. And they've already started having information sessions. They've looked at a lot of possibilities for their school, as well as Marvin Ridge Middle, of looking at a middle years program. And since the high school has that program, logical that there may be interest there for a middle years program as students progress from 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade on into the high school level. And so there are several options. So at this time, I will allow Jessica Garner to come up to the table, as well as Dr. Facin, and Mr. Eversol's here, and Mr. Eversol from the middle school, and to kind of explain, Ms. Garner will explain where we are with IB expansion, some of the other elements of that expansion, and then, of course, answer any questions that you have of the two principals that have been looking into it over the past year.
While we're handing this out, can you tell us the dates or how many information sessions were held at Porter Ridge High School with the community? And what were those dates? And was it last spring or over the summer?
Dr. Harris will come up as well. He was principal at Porter Ridge High School last year.
I live in the Porter Ridge cluster, and I don't remember seeing any information sessions or,
Okay.
so I would like more information on that.
Okay.
I merely mentioned it a couple of open houses.
Push the mic.
The August open houses.
The ones in the spring, when we were doing the gatherings for transitions between Piedmont and Porter Ridge with the realignment. So I mentioned it.
So
there
during
for-
registration?
Registration period.
Spring
Correct.
registration.
Correct.
Okay. Okay.
How many did you have? Do you estimate you had?
Around 100. Wasn't a lot, but yes.
There for registration or only to get more information about IB?
Registration. And that's
Okay.
when I mentioned it.
Didn't specifically express
Correct.
interest.
Correct.
Can you also talk about other communications that you had with other groups, like your site-based team, faculty, anything like that,
I've had it with
about interest or about, is this something that we want to do as a community?
site-based PTO, teachers, and they all seem to be very receptive to it.
Thank you. I believe there was also a conversation last spring. We were informed that there was going to be an IB conference this summer. Did anyone attend that conference to gather more information? Did anyone go to the IB conference?
No, nobody attended an IB conference. We do have a teacher that's serving in the role of IB coordinator to help us get the application together. We have at our next site-based meeting,
Mhm.
we're going to have more discussion about the IB program. And then we have a meet the teacher night, like fall open house. And it will also be discussed briefly there so that we can put that out there for parents who want more information.
So we had 10 students from across the county. I'm assuming you were saying that 10 other than Marvin Ridge students applied. So 10 students from outside of Marvin Ridge applied for IB. We have 11 high schools, so 10 students applied. And did all 10 in the IB program now, did all 10 accept the invitation once they were accepted?
And I may be wrong on this, but I believe the numbers were more in the 30s in terms of the number of students who actually qualified and met the criteria.
Mhm, okay.
Then over the course of the summer, when it came down to make your decision, do you want to attend Marvin Ridge for your 11th and 12th? That number dropped from 30-ish to 10. And then of those 10, 2 said, I want transportation. But there were more than 10 who applied, who met the criteria, and who qualified. But I think over the course of the summer, when they had to make their decision, that number dropped down to those who were really going to be committed to doing that.
How
So right
many?
now there are 10 outside the Marvin
Uh-huh.
attendance zone
Okay.
that are there.
And 8 are providing their own transportation. So correct me if I'm wrong, in our last budget, we allocated $100,000 for a bus. So it sounds like we're $100,000 for 2 students to ride the bus.
I'm making an assumption that the $100,000 budgeted item is definitely not going to be used to the full capacity. I don't know what the number is going to be, but I cannot imagine that we're spending $100,000 on 2 students to provide transportation.
But when it came to us, the request was for $100,000 to provide a bus. That's what was requested in our
Overall
budget.
Transportation cost.
The overall
How much that would relate to it.
And so I am curious, do we really have a bus out there with 2 students on it?
The latest communication that we've had with transportation is that because it's only 2 students, they're not going to use a bus. They've contracted that. And I don't have the name of the contractor that they use. That's a transportation question, and we can get that for you.
Okay, yes, please. If
um,
you could get that for the board, that'd be great.
So what you're saying basically is you anticipate that budget amount to be nowhere near what's actually needed.
Correct.
What we
Okay.
put into the budget.
Yeah. Okay.
Correct. And
All
I
right.
believe at the time in the spring, the budget was generated based on the fact that there were 30 children across
I
the
believe it
county
was.
that were qualified and were
Mm-hmm.
interested and that might need transportation. And that's all we had to go with at the time.
Sure.
So how many 10th and 11th graders are currently in IB?
So the current junior class has 55 IB students, and the senior class is around the same number. Because of the A day, B day schedule, the way that it works, they have a capacity of about 55 to 60 students per cohort, because you teach A day, B day. And so, when it's time to expand that, as the middle school comes up, as we start to look at expanding that, I think that you would end up training another cohort of teachers so that you would essentially have the capacity to double that.
How confident are you on those numbers? Because the numbers I had for IB was around 80 students, and that would be 110.
So I have an email from Friday
Uh-huh.
from the IB coordinator at Marvin that is 55 total IB juniors.
But you're guessing for the seniors.
Based on last year,
Estimating.
it's around the same number. We can definitely get that exact number for seniors.
Okay.
And what would be your maximum capacity?
So I think that right now they're looking at, I mean, it's around 60. It just depends on
Okay.
how big you want to make those classrooms.
Gotcha. Do you know approximately how big they are now?
So it's basically that 55 kind of cut in half is what that looks like.
I mean, the
So-
actual class. Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So 20.
27,
20,
28 per
right.
class. Okay.
Mhm,
So let's say let's say 110 students are in IB.
mhm.
10 are from outside of the Marvin cluster. So approximately 100 are Marvin Ridge students.
10 from the junior class are from outside. So 10 of the
Okay.
55. From the senior class, this is just going off memory. I believe it was like 6, maybe it was a little bit fewer.
So you can jump in just for your senior year, or they were already
They were already
in
in, right.
from their junior
From
year?
their junior.
Providing
Okay.
their own transportation.
All right. Yeah. Did any of the seniors, of those 2, is that all juniors that accepted it, or maybe 1 junior, 1 senior?
These ones that I believe they were both juniors.
Okay.
Mhm.
Do we have a wait list of students at Marvin Ridge waiting to get into IB? Is there a wait list?
I do not believe that they do a wait list. They do an application period, and I believe that you're either in or you're out when they do that application.
So if you're saying, well, if you feel like you maybe want to cap the cohort at 60, it sounds like you still have a little capacity left for students to have joined on the junior level. Is that?
And I don't know how many total applications they got. We can find that out, definitely.
So applications were not accepted because they didn't meet the qualifications?
Well, and I think some
or-
students chose not to accept the acceptance, if you will.
After they
I
looked
know-
at it harder, they
Yes.
decided not to.
Yeah,
Okay.
there were, I mean,
All right.
even on the list of students that had originally requested transportation, there were 6 that originally requested transportation, and then a few of those did not choose to accept the program. And then a couple of those students ended up providing their own transportation.
Yeah, Mom and Dad said they could use the car after all.
Yeah.
That's probably
So I
why.
think what we should do at this point is allow you to go through this presentation with us, and
Okay.
then we'll follow up with some more questions.
Okay. So essentially what we are looking at here is, and the first page of this kind of gives an overview. There's about 50 plus students per cohort. Dr. Harris, I have one for you. 10 students currently from the outside, 2 are receiving transportation. So I did have that in there to give you the update. But if you go to the next to the next page, what we're looking at doing is expanding the Marvin Ridge cluster, because, you know, when you've got just a program at 11th and 12th grade, there is a piece of that where a student going from 10th to 11th grade, it's a tough sell to get those students who've invested in their school for 2 years to look at moving. So we've got a couple of ideas about how to expand that at Marvin Ridge, whether it's formally through the IB institution, or whether it is a cohort model where we bring those kids in from 9th grade, but don't necessarily do the official piece, because that is allowed. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But then also, you know, the best IB programs start truly in elementary school with building that learner profile and giving kids the mindset and the opportunity to learn in these ways, so that when they get to the high school, they're set up for success. So because it started in the high school, we're looking at, instead of starting at the elementary and moving up, starting at the high school and moving down. So Marvin Ridge Middle is looking at adopting, and that is a whole school model. So when you look at IB in the elementary or the middle school, there's no application period. There's no requirement to get into those programs. That is a whole school model where every student is really exposed to the tenets of IB. And then with the immersion program at Marvin Elementary, there is a language component to IB. So it makes sense to eventually move that down to Marvin Elementary. In the Porter Ridge cluster, we're looking at a similar model that was started in the Marvin Ridge cluster, but tweaking it a little bit. So Porter Ridge is looking at adding at the high school level, but instead of just starting with that junior senior class, looking at starting in the 9th grade with a cohort model. And the same idea that they wouldn't necessarily have a formal MYP program in 9th and 10th grade, but that those students would come in 9th grade so that they can become invested in Porter Ridge with the intention of applying to that DP program between their sophomore, junior year, and then staying into that IB program. And then looking at an eventual expansion, moving down. And immersion for Porter Ridge, of course, is at Poplin Elementary. So that would kind of be the natural progression down the road several years.
And again, just a reminder, so the IB as an organization requires, if you have a primary years program, so PYP, that's elementary based, requires you to have a language component.
Yes.
So I think, again, just to make sense of this, because we already have elementary schools that have dual language immersion in their schools, that makes sense if we wanted to get the vertical alignment.
You have to decide when your kids go into kindergarten.
Well, and again, the elementary model for IB is more of exposure to the IB learner profile. It's interdisciplinary teaching. It's global mindset kind of thing. You're not locked into anything in kindergarten. You can go through an IB elementary and middle school and choose not to continue into high school.
But I mean, but you are locked in for the DLI component. If we're going to accompany that with DLI, you're making a decision for your kid gets into kindergarten to enroll in DLI. And if we're saying that's part of the elementary component, you don't.
Can we pause for just a minute? For our listeners, we are using a lot of abbreviations, like a lot of abbreviations.
Yes.
Can you give us like a brief description of what the IB program is?
Sure. Let's
You
move
said
to the
DLI?
next dual language immersion.
Dual language
All right.
immersion.
Dual language immersion. So
And I
let's
knew
move.
garbage.
We'll get into some of the specifics, and let's talk a little bit about the benefits of IB for students. So on the next page, if you will, really the tenets of IB are around creating a student that is going to be globally competitive and globally ready to interact with others, to be competitive in a global market. So there is a big piece of IB that encourages students to think independently, drive their own learning. Much of the tenets of IB fold in really nicely with our new empowered instructional framework. So there's a nice alignment there. Students who complete the diploma program through IB, which you'll hear that referred to as the DP program, the diploma program, that is the 11th and 12th grade model that we currently have at Marvin Ridge High School. Those students are accepted at universities at higher levels, whether they actually earn the IB diploma or not. They're accepted, they enroll at universities at higher rates. I've got some research on the next page. And in fact, there are many universities in the United States that will give a student free tuition if they earn their IB diploma. Yeah. There are several that will do that. Not necessarily the full ride, room and board, but they will waive tuition. students will develop a second language. They have to have, coming into the diploma program, they have to have at least 3 years of a language, and then they continue that for 2 more in high school. So it is comparable, if not higher than an AP language. And then really just the way that the IB curriculum is taught encourages kids to work together, to solve problems, to investigate, to be curious. All of those pieces that we already are looking at with our instructional framework. So if you flip the page, this is very connected to college readiness. 92% of students that are enrolled in DP, which is that diploma program, 92% of those students enrolled in post-secondary institutions within a time span, and then immediately 78% of those students enrolled. So that means finishing senior year and entering immediately after. I think that this next retention rate, there's a 98% first-year retention rate of diploma program students who are enrolled in those 4-year institutions, which is a fantastic retention rate. And then a 79% 4-year graduation rate of all diploma program students. And that includes the students who earned and who did not earn the actual diploma, just those who participated. If you look at the 6-year graduation rate, it goes up to 83% of those students. And notice that the national average at the time was 56%. And these data are from IB. They're a little bit older. That was the 2009 national graduation rate, but you can still see the comparable difference there between the 83% of students who participated in that diploma program. And the diploma program is similar to AP, where when you get to the end of the course or the end of the program, you have the option to take this, to sit for the exam. It's not a requirement. We have required that at Marvin Ridge, that if you do this, you will sit for the program. But that's something that we can look at. And as we look at our philosophy of, are we trying to increase opportunities for students to expose them to this? Do we believe that this is something that, regardless of whether they earn that diploma, it's good for them? We can kind of make that decision as we get farther into it. But I think that these data kind of show you that regardless of whether you earn that diploma, whether you sat for it and didn't pass or sat for it and did, that these students graduate from college at higher rates than students who did not have that opportunity. So kind of what we're looking at here is, and I'm going to start with Marvin Ridge Middle, really looking at this year applying for candidacy. And what that really means is that you engage in a formal partnership with IB to say, we're going to go down this road. You pay a fee, and then you get support from them to start working on this process. It is a 3-year process. Mr. Eversole did go to training this summer to learn about IB. So this year would really be about professional development for teachers, for an IB coordinator that would have to be put into place, and then additional training for assistant principals as well.
What is the fee for the application process?
$4,000.
But again, this is a 3-year time frame. So if you go down this road now, you will not be authorized until 2021.
Correct.
So it takes that amount of time for, so I believe they come in and not just look at your application, they make site visits, and it's a very rigorous process to be authorized. So you're still would be 3 years away from saying the middle school is IB.
Is it a one-time fee, or is it $4,000 each for the 3-year process?
So the candidacy fee is a one-time fee, and then there is an annual fee for the MYP program, and I did not bring that in front of me.
For the which one?
For the middle years program. So the middle years program, just the IB has 3 different programs. They have a primary years program, which is referred to as PYP. That is strictly elementary.
Which we're not talking about.
Correct. And that's whole school model. They have a middle years program, which actually goes from 6th through 10th grade. So for Marvin Ridge Middle, they would have the middle years program, the MYP, but it would only go through 8th grade there. So it's actually depending on the setup of your school, because this is an international model. So they deal with schools across the world, and there are lots of different configurations. So for the way that we do school in the United States, the middle years program is usually a 6-8 model. And then when you get to the high school, they're usually a combination of middle years program and diploma program, which is that 11th and 12th grade year. There are some schools in the U.S., there are quite a few that do the middle years program in grades 6 through 8, do not do the middle years program in grades 9 and 10, and then do bring on the diploma program in 11th and 12th. They do allow that. They recommend if you have the middle years program that you do cohort those students because there are some prerequisites. And so that's something that we could look at doing, if we chose to go that route of not having the formal program at 9th and 10th grade and then picking that back up in 11th and 12th grade for the diploma program.
Do we offer scholarships in regards to that $4,000
So
fee?
that's a fee that the district pays for the school.
pays.
The
For
school
the
pays
school.
it. Yes, the
Not
school.
the student.
Yeah,
Thanks for clarity.
absolutely. Yeah, the school pays that fee. And it's a one-time fee that the school pays really to enter into that partnership, to get support for going through this process.
So that is just the fee to apply.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So if you don't mind, let's assume you get in.
Mhm.
What is the startup cost in year one? And then what are the annual fees ongoing?
So the startup cost in year one really depends on how you do your training. There's an annual fee that is 90. Could you go grab it if you don't mind real quick? There's an annual fee for the middle years program it hovers around $10,000. The real cost is in the training. So you are required to train in 8 different content areas. They offer face-to-face trainings that you can send your folks to. They also offer some online modules. And so one of the things that we have kind of talked about with Marvin Ridge is that in the first year they would look at getting a grade level team trained or either a subject level across grade level. So we're still kind of talking about what that would look like. But getting the bulk of the training done this year with having some teachers go and having some teachers do the online components. They're offered at certain sites around the country. That's kind of how IB does their training. And so you send folks to the training. It's a week long. They dig into the curriculum. They learn the tenets of IB, and they start planning interdisciplinary units. So, one of the things that the teachers are required to do, and this is why it's such a rich experience for the students, it forces the teachers to work together collaboratively, to have students working on a project that crosses the language arts, social studies, science, math classes, all of those different courses. They create units working together. And so they will start on the creation of these units at the training, and then they continue to carry that out at the school. So, what we have looked at doing is putting some of our Title IV grant money aside for training purposes so that we can support the training. It fits with our goal of increasing access to rigorous courses for students within Title IV. And so other than the professional development, the fee, did you have the budget?
Candidacy fee for the year would be $9,500. So there's an application fee. The $4,000 is to get in, get started. Then with the candidacy fee, and that's with supports coming from IB, coming out to the schools, things of that nature. That's a $9,500 fee.
In addition to the 4,000.
Right.
Yes,
The 4,000 is one time. You pay that when you initially apply, and then you have that ongoing 95. It's a fee to
And
be
the
recognized.
9,500 begins after
It actually
in
begins
20,
in
what did
the
you say,
spring.
2021?
No, the 9,500. So you pay the 4,000
Uh-huh.
to apply, and then that's the first year is your most expensive year because then that spring you pay that 9,500.
Even though you haven't even started the IB
Correct.
program, correct?
You start teaching it. You just
Mhm.
aren't an official verified IB World School
Gotcha.
until that third year.
Is there ongoing costs for curriculum, supplies, specialized textbooks, what have you?
So there is some ongoing cost. Once you kind of get your textbooks going, those don't change more often than we would change textbooks for any course, unless you add students. Very similar to the way we look at IB or Career and College Promise. The ongoing cost really is in professional development.
And what is that estimate?
I mean, it varies. So the first year we put aside, and I don't know that we would get to this. I think we looked at how many training 8 teachers plus your assistant principal and the IB coordinator, sending them. That would be just under 14,000. And of course, that's your initial push to get everybody trained. Then once you do that, as new teachers come on, you would send them much like you would a conference. And so you would probably look at ongoing professional development after that. Again, it just depends on how much teacher turnover you have, but probably around $5,000 to $6,000 per year in professional development.
And did you say Title IV fundings might apply to some of that?
Absolutely. So this year we definitely looked at, if this is going to go, then we have set aside Title IV money for both schools, Porter Ridge High School and Marvin Ridge Middle School, to
So
expand that.
I have a couple of challenges here. I do want to allow you to finish this presentation. So we didn't set aside this money in our budget for this year.
Correct. We had not gotten to the point in the budget conversation about any kind of expansion. So the funding for the training, as Ms. Gardner said, she can set that aside through Title IV. That's through the federal government, just like Title I, II, III, IV.
Correct.
There's funding in that to allow for teacher training. And so that whole piece is set aside. The fee, what we have to decide is the fee for the application. Is the school going to pay that? Is the district going to pay that? And then the ongoing cost to be budgeted in the future, is that something the district's going to support, or is the school going to pay? And we're not there yet for the future years.
But to begin the application process, you have to be there because the bill's due.
You have to pay the $4,000 fee to apply. Correct.
Okay, let's move on.
Okay. So you can see the proposed timeline for Marvin Ridge Middle. Okay. Moving on, looking at the high school, we've got a couple of different options. And the idea for Marvin Ridge High School is that we would like to use this fall and spring to have a little bit more conversation with the community as we're starting this conversation. We want to see what the interest would be out there for students who are currently sitting in 8th grade to start in 9th grade. So we've got two different proposals here. The first one is, if we went and decided to say we're going to add the middle years program for 9th and 10th grade, we could gather that feedback. And if we have the feedback from the community in March, we would do that application. IB actually has two different application times. One is if you start in the fall, and one is if you would like to apply in the spring. And it's just a slightly different time frame. This is the high school time frame that's listed here is really intended for schools that start in August, and it's a slightly different time frame for high schools than it would be for middle because of the nature of the cohorts. In middle school, because it's whole school, it's a little bit less complicated. So the first one is if there was interest in actually starting the middle years program at 9th and 10th grade at Marvin Ridge High, what that would look like. And on the next page, if you look, this is the idea that starting with the next school year, the 1920 school year, that we would open that application for students who are rising 9th graders, but we wouldn't necessarily go down the formal middle years program route at that time. We would kind of get in there and see. So really just kind of looking at what is the direction that the school wants to go, how do the teachers feel about that as far as the preparation level of the students. I think if you start this at 9th grade, you will see more interest from students across the district because that's an easier transition time for kids. And so
your whole 4 years.
Right. And so I think that there's some conversation. Not only that, if you start the students in 9th grade, you can guarantee at your school that they get the prerequisites that they need. One of the things that IB does is, and Dr. Fasin can talk to this a little bit because she was at Marvin Ridge High School when it started, but she mentioned this idea of IB has tentacles that reach into the whole school, and it essentially ends up lifting the whole school. I'll let you kind of share that story that you shared with us.
Sure. When the IB diploma program started at Marvin Ridge High School, there are certain prerequisites that had to be met. And so the school found itself in the position of having to really think forward more and plan as students entered high school as to what their goals were going to be. And so because of the rigorous demands of the IB program, there are a lot of prerequisites that have to be met. And so you really have to take the time to look at what has the student achieved so far in middle school, what do they and their families see as their future in high school and beyond. And so you start planning with that student in 9th grade, very much like we do with the course planner and Navient, about what is your projected path when you're in high school. And so in order to be in the IB program, you have to have certain prerequisites, a minimum of 3, if not 4 world languages. You have to be through chemistry, not just biology. And so you have to work on that, and you have to double up in math so that you can take those higher level maths in the IB program. And so it really had a great ripple effect because starting to plan with those particular students also caused the school at the time to plan with all of the students. And that's one of the reasons I'm so excited about bringing this to Porter Ridge, is because I think that same idea of the effects of IB reaching all of the students because of the planning component is important. And I also think it's really important because of the professional development of the staff. When you train some of the staff to teach the IB courses, that really does hook in with the empowered learning. It really increases the rigor in the classroom. And that has a ripple effect to going out to the other courses those teachers teach. It has a ripple effect in vertical planning to make sure that the students rising when they get to junior year are completely prepared for the IB program. So I think there's so many more benefits than just for the students that apply and are in the diploma program their junior and senior year.
I also think it causes us, and this is perhaps a gap that we have, to really start educating families and students before they even get into ninth grade.
Right.
We've got to have those conversations with middle school students in 6th and 7th grade because of those requirements when you get to a junior. And that's a definite area of growth that we have, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Just increasing that vertical alignment. So that's kind of the idea of looking at a couple of different options for Marvin Ridge High. And then Porter Ridge High would look at the candidacy starting this March, moving through the authorization, and then first authorized teaching in August of 2020, which means that the freshmen that are currently sitting at Porter Ridge, or really at any school, could be eligible for that diploma program starting their junior year. We would look also at a cohort model at Porter Ridge, starting the students in 9th grade to make sure, again, that you can get all those prerequisites in.
Can you utilize option 2 with, if I understand it correctly, the less formal certified IB program on 9 and 10 right away?
Yes.
Can you utilize that model over at Porter Ridge to start it off on that path? Is that what you're proposing?
That is what we're proposing for Porter.
timeline.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
That's what we're proposing for Porter Ridge, really to see, let's get the part. And I think that part of it is that the kids will really see the benefit of it if they know that they've got that diploma. That's kind of the hook for people, but starting that in 9th grade. So I think, if there was a desire by the teachers to add the middle years program for 9th and 10th at some point down the road, that would be an option as well. But really, to start both of those programs at the same time, I think would be a bigger bite to chew than start with a diploma program that gets you get the reward at the end of the diploma program because you earn that diploma. So that's the rationale for starting with that 11th and 12th grade formally with IB, and then over time, potentially adding that middle years program for 9th and 10th.
If you do that, what are your commitments different as far as teacher training? I understand you're going to hold off on the application fees, obviously. Are you still looking at the investments in teacher training to get that off that level?
No, not if you start just with 11th and 12th grade. The teachers who are teaching in that diploma program at 11th and 12th grade would be required to be trained. The 9th and 10th grade teachers who weren't formally teaching MYP would not need the official IB training. Now, something that we've talked a lot about is bringing in trainers, local non-IB official people, to do some training around the tenets and the understanding with even the whole staff, so that
pre-training,
correct,
if you will.
Absolutely. Informal training by, IB coordinators in other districts who've been doing this for a long time, and getting that training. And that would also supplement even the teachers who are teaching IB. They would have to be officially trained by IB, but we could also provide some of that at a lower cost by looking at that locally.
So we start at 9th grade at Porter Ridge, and we judge the true interest before we make the full investment, work our way up to when the cohorts get up there in 11th and 12th grade, and we've got a full-blown accredited IB program.
That's not how I understood it. You have to apply and go ahead and invest in order to start in 9th grade. I mean, this isn't
it's a 2-year
maybe I
process.
misunderstood what you said.
It's a 2-year
Well,
process.
What they're saying is in 9th and 10th grade, you can do something that looks like IB, but it's not certified IB. Did I get that right?
I thought it was certified as
9th and 10th grade, we would not go down the road of adding the middle years program at Porter Ridge initially.
what about Marvin Ridge High School, 9th and 10th grade?
Those are the two proposals that are on the table.
Right.
You could
So-
either do the same model where you start in 9th and 10th grade with the unofficial, where we're going to bring them in 9th grade so that we could put them in a cohort and make sure they have the prerequisites. Or we could go down the road of the middle years program, adding that official if we had the buy-in from the community.
Okay. So what's the true difference to the student if you go proposal 1 or proposal 2? You're both of the end in mind is to get them ready for the full-blown program in 11 and 12, right? So does it make a difference between proposal 1 and proposal 2, preparing them for that? Are they going to lose something with proposal 2?
I think IB would tell you that they would,
Yeah.
right? I think that they would. I think it depends on how we implement.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Let's clean this up a little bit.
Okay.
What is your request today? Your request today is for Marvin Ridge Middle School, 6th, 7th, and 8th.
Correct.
Okay?
Whole school.
6, 7, 8. Then you're asking for Marvin Ridge High School, 9 and 10, yes or no?
To move to a cohort model, definitely 9 and 10, starting with next school year, and then investigating whether they're ready to add the official middle years program since they've had the diploma program in place.
Okay, so you're not asking or proposing to start 9th and 10th officially today or September application?
Yeah. Are you asking for an answer on proposal 1 and 2 today?
I am
Is
not.
that what you're
No,
looking for?
I am
Okay.
saying that what we would like, the piece that we would like to do is the change for Marvin Ridge High School is to move from accepting students starting in their junior year to allow them to come to Marvin Ridge in their freshman year. Whether that's formal or informal, I think that's something that's a bridge we could cross once we kind of, get into it, when we can have more conversation. But I think what would make the difference for Marvin Ridge High School in expanding would be to allow students to start in 9th grade, even if it's not an official.
Okay,
Be an
so
intent.
I think I'm with you now.
Okay.
So you're proposing that this year, as opposed to the application the way it's always been done for 11th and 12th,
Correct.
you're proposing that this year, incoming 9th and 9th graders
Mhm.
would now apply instead of waiting until their junior year to apply.
That is correct for the
Okay.
for 1920, right? So the application that the kids fill out in the spring. So obviously, we've already started school this year, so looking a year ahead.
I like proposal 2. I like proposal 2 to be implemented at both Porter Ridge and Marvin Ridge High. It's the next best thing to IB. And then once we get this cranking on down the road, then fine. And you see that you've got the demand, proven demand. Then I see moving 9 and 10 to a full IB accredited as well.
Okay.
Yeah. We go all the way. That's the model. And then we take Porter Ridge to that model too. We take them to 11 and 12 when that cohort gets up there, and we pull 9 and 10 into an accredited program too. As
Mr.
long as
Sides,
there's
I'm
demand.
still on proposal 1, if you don't.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
so proposal 1
Mhm.
is Marvin Ridge Middle School, the middle years program, 6, 7, and 8.
Correct.
Okay? Starting the application process in 9th grade this year to go ahead and bring kids to a high school environment.
Yes.
And then still on proposal 1, you're proposing beginning an IB program at Porter Ridge High School. That's
Correct. With the similar
for
model.
11th and 12th or 9?
With the similar model at Marvin Ridge High. So they would come in as 9th graders in the cohort model, but they wouldn't have the official middle years program at 9th and 10th. Once they got to their 10th grade year, they would then
Be prepared.
be prepared to start that
Okay.
diploma program.
So now that we have proposal 1 mapped out, what is proposal 2?
So really, there's the proposal 1 and 2 was only looking at Marvin Ridge High School. I think we would ask for the same thing at Marvin Ridge Middle School. We would ask for the same thing at Porter Ridge High School. The difference would be that, as Mr. Sides said, once we get things up and running, then do we expand to full IB accreditation at the high schools. And I think, with Marvin Ridge High School, we're looking at, they have been up and running for several years with a very successful diploma program. So are we at the point at Marvin Ridge High School that we're ready to then apply for the middle years program. And I think that is a piece that we just need to have more conversation with the teachers, with the parents of the current students, to kind of talk about how prepared they felt and look at some of those pieces.
Okay, so what I gathered, thank you. So what I gathered from this presentation is that the big picture is Marvin Ridge Elementary. So that's going to be the next request, the next application. When do you anticipate wanting to ask for that?
That would be several years down the road.
Okay, so so this is a huge investment.
It is.
So in an ongoing investment, and so I'm concerned that now we're talking about an elementary, middle, and high times 2 or times 6. And Marvin Ridge Middle School is currently at 97% capacity. And Porter Ridge High School is at 96% capacity. And these are capacities that we are estimating for the next 6 years. So I am really concerned that how do you propose, making such a huge financial investment, and there may or may not be seats for the kids to sit in.
So I think for the middle school and the elementary school, that is not, that is just a whole school model at that school. That's not necessarily a magnet unless we get to the spot where we have space.
Okay, so kids can't apply to go to Marvin Ridge Middle or Marvin Ridge Elementary.
Unless there was space. It would be a transfer request, I would say. I mean,
so this is just exclusive to Marvin Ridge residents.
For the elementary middle piece, it would be.
Unless there was space.
Unless there was space, correct.
It would be subject to school choice if it meets capacity, which it doesn't sound.
It does not meet school
Yeah.
choice. School choice has to be below 90%.
So it'd have to go on. If we got there, it'd have to be.
So this would be exclusive for one cluster.
Expanding to 2 so that we'd have options on both sides of Highway 74.
So are you just looking for comment and feedback, and there's no decision-making process to be made today, or where do we?
We did not anticipate any action to be taken by the committee today. It was a discussion to get your feedback and comments, because I did not want the schools to go down this road of even applying for candidacy without the board, number one, knowing, and number two, without the support of the board. Because I think if they end up going down that road, then the discussion needs to be, okay, how do we budget for this? And the balance between what does the school pay, what does the school system pay, and all these other questions about access. And so I think it was a discussion today to get your feedback and questions. But again, I did not feel comfortable having the schools go down that road of applying until we had this discussion.
Just my personal opinion, and board members, please, share your thoughts. My personal opinion, digesting all of this, is that why not see this spring how many people apply for ninth grade, to see what the true demand is from the county. It sounds like somewhere between 10 and 30 people were interested after the road show. That's not a significant percentage when you have 41,500 students. And then 10 accepted. So, my personal suggestion would be, let's open it up for ninth grade applications this year. Put the road show back out there and say, we're now going to open it up like early college and CATA and get you in ninth grade, and see what the demand is or isn't. Because we thought 30 kids might be riding the bus.
Right.
And so the board, approved $100,000 And now I'm hearing only two people took that
advantage of
option. And then we had to get creative and come up with a contract service for 2 students.
I have a question. Were those 10 students across the district? Like
Mhm.
what part of the district?
Good
I don't have the
question.
specific schools. We can get that if you're interested. 10
Definitely.
received approval to transfer from within Union County Public Schools.
I would love to know how many Marvin Ridge students, Marvin Ridge Middle School students applied. No. Because we're still at 11th grade. I would like to know how many Marvin Ridge students applied and how many other outside of Marvin Ridge apply, and where were they from?
Okay, we can find that out.
That would be very helpful. But I personally think the first step, absolutely, let's open it up and try to get them in ninth grade
Mhm.
so that we're not disrupting a student's high school career
Mhm.
after they've already become part of another community.
Right, absolutely.
I think that's in terms of opening it up to other students across the county. It's another reason why the Porter Ridge community was interested in seeing, because we don't know if we had another offering in another part of the county, would more kids be interested? We don't know that right now. All we know is that the Porter Ridge community is interested. And so having multiple sites, would that also give us more points for access? I don't know, but that's
Well,
another thought behind this.
That was my point. What tools can we give Dr. Facin so she can have a better gauge of the actual
Interest
interest
demand,
level and
demand.
intent of
Mhm.
those serious to go through?
Mhm.
Let's give her all those tools so that she can
Because-
get a hard feel
Because
for
my
the
concern, and
interest.
that's a great point. My concern is there's not a huge demand. There's a huge demand at CATA. We have a wait list,
Mhm.
huge demand.
Mhm.
And now more and more people are wanting early college. I'm not sure I'm hearing that or perceiving that from the community with IB.
Mhm.
But if we change the application process
Right.
this year for
It could
ninth
be.
grade, maybe it will present that there is a demand beyond Marvin Ridge.
I think there's truly been a perception that IB is for Marvin Ridge High School.
Absolutely.
I mean, I think that's been the
Absolutely.
perception, even as we've opened it up. I don't know that, and let's be honest, geographically, that school is challenging to get to. As a Porter Ridge parent, trying to think about getting my child there,
Or let them drive there.
right, 485, I mean, it's challenging.
Can I say something?
Mrs. Helms would like to speak.
I've actually talked to several parents, and one of my friends, her son was interested in the IB program, and she didn't even know we had an IB program in Union County. So I think the perception is that it's not widely known that there is an IB program in Union County at all.
And I think that's why a road show and going out to the different clusters is a good first step. But I live in
Can we-
Porter Ridge, and I didn't hear about the road show.
I didn't either. But I mean, granted, my child was senior, so it doesn't matter at this point in time. But is there a way too that maybe the middle school / high school guidance counselors can maybe pull students that may be eligible to apply and get into the program, and even pull, send an email to those parents, et cetera?
Yes, 2 things. Again, going back to last year, the road show was literally the principal and the IB coordinator for Marvin Ridge going to the middle schools. Going to the high schools. It wasn't a road show in the sense of, everyone from the whole community come out, parents and everyone else. It was, who are the students in all of our high schools that have already met the criteria? Let's pull them in and explain what IB is and if you're interested. The second education, I'll finish up real quick, Ms. Helms. The second piece that we did is we actually had, I believe it was in the fall at South Piedmont, we had a high school showcase, programs expo that had all of our academies, all of our CTE stuff. IB was there. And so that was another way that we did try to communicate this is an option. But I agree, Ms. Helms, I think we've got to do a lot better job educating the general public about our IB program.
When the students were pulled in for the presentation for the IB program, were their parents alerted to it?
I'm not sure. I don't know.
Okay, because that can make a huge difference, because what the child may want, they might hear, you know, oh, you'll go to Marvin Ridge, and that might, and some of those kids might go, well, I don't want to go to Marvin Ridge. You know, I'm a Porter Ridge pirate. That's where I want to stay. And so unless they have guidance from the parents, I don't think that's a good option just to present this information to the kids, because after all, they're still children and they need guidance of what they need to do and what their parents think is best for them. So if we don't know that if the parents were contacted or not, maybe that's another step that we need to go back and look at and say, you know, and involve these parents and say, hey, your child was introduced to this program. You know, did you have any feedback, questions, comments?
I agree.
We can do that. I think what I hear you saying is, instead of just having the students come out of their class one day in high school to say, hey, guess what? You qualify, maybe in the evening or after school, make it a family night where parents come with the child and you learn about, you know, the benefits of IB, that you qualify, et cetera. And this is the process if you're interested.
And
Oh, absolutely.
And quite honestly, I don't want, I think it should be open to the community so that we can truly find out what the demand is. I don't want to just select which students we want to be in the program, because there may be a student on or off the radar or that might thrive in an IB program that maybe the administration did not identify. And so I think it should be open to all students and all parents, and then they have to see what the rigor and the expectations are to get in, and not isolate a kid before they've even had an opportunity.
Well, and I think that the reason for picking those individual students is because we started in 11th grade. And so there are those prerequisite, you know, that you had to have going in. So that problem will be eliminated if we start with 9th grade, because then we can make sure you have those prerequisites. If you're truly interested, you wouldn't have to be quite as selective at that point. You got a little bit more time to get them ready. So that's the other rationale for moving to a ninth grade cohort model.
And getting in front of those
Parents.
7th or 8th graders,
Yep.
like Naviance,
Right.
and, you know, planting the seeds so that they can start preparing for what path they want.
So I want to make sure that once we open the application, open this up to the entire community, the students from the Monroe Forest Hill cluster, I'm thinking about the trip, like the transportation. I want to make sure they have transportation to get from District 1 all the way to Marvin and or Porter Ridge. And once accepted, they do not have to wait. What is it, like a 10-day? They have to complete some type of application for transportation, and they have to wait like so many days before the application is approved. Am I making sense?
Yeah, have them fast tracked.
Yeah, they have to wait and worry about their parents commuting them to those schools.
And transportation is a huge hurdle. That's why the board supported the request for $100,000 in our budget to the county. We were like, okay, let's see how many we get. So it is a little disheartening to hear that only 2 committed today. That's a new number for me, because when it was presented to us, we were thinking 30. So I think, we definitely have, some transportation hurdles at this point. And again, it may be uprooting a high school student from, after 10th grade, after they've already bought into their high school. So I think there could be a lot of different components working against us right now. So I agree with opening it up to rising 9th graders immediately this year. I'm not sure that I will look towards my other board members to see, are we ready to start dropping $14,000 for Marvin Ridge Middle, Porter Ridge High, and beginning an application process. I think that's the answer you're looking for today. Do we start investing today and moving forward with a September application? Are you asking for a September application or a March application?
So
So the middle school's a
March
different timeline
2019.
than the high school.
I'm
Porter
so
Ridge,
sorry, what?
the middle school's a different timeline. Porter Ridge High School would be in the spring. Marvin Ridge Middle would be this fall.
So Porter Ridge High School is the March application,
Correct.
and Marvin Ridge Middle is the September application.
Correct.
I personally am not prepared to move forward on a middle school application until we take care of the 9th and 10th grade students. And I'll turn it over to the other 3 board members. And we didn't discuss it in this year's budget either. I mean, you know, we definitely need to hear this type of request between January, March, April, when we're putting our budgets together. So that we know what we're asking from the county also, because we have to have this turned over to the county, what we need in May.
Yeah, again, last year, the timing did not work out. In the spring, the 2 school communities had not fully come forward until really this summer to say this is something that we want to move forward with. And so it was just a timing issue.
Okay. So it doesn't look like the timing works for a September application. And then in March, we'll still be in this budget, but we'll be preparing for the next budget. But I think immediately I would encourage staff to start marketing to our 7th and 8th graders for a 9th grade application to see what the interest would be for IB. Any other board comments? Any input, thoughts, Gary?
Yes. If you would have to apply on the middle school first, you would have to apply no later than spring of this year to be able to still offer it fall of 2019, or would that be too soon a timeline? On the middle school, Marvin Ridge Middle, I'm sorry.
Timeline would be, well.
Yeah.
Sorry. Buttons. Timeline would be the benefit of applying now would be, or the September, is to work through that process throughout the year. That way, when we're down the road, you know, we're getting ahead on our 3-year walk with our trainings, and you know, until you pay that candidacy fee, it doesn't open you up to all the options and the information and the trainings that you need for your staff. So you can look at doing it later in the spring as well, but then that just really kind of, it's just going to put us in kind of the same situation for the following year.
But does it rule you out being able to offer it fall of 2019 if you apply in the spring?
No, it does not.
Okay.
It does not. We'll just be in the same. We'll just be a year later.
You just wouldn't have had as much time to train teachers and go through curriculum planning and those things.
Well, that's what I'm saying. But is that still enough time to offer it fall of 2019?
I believe so. It's too
Is-
late.
It's too late. Yes.
It's too late?
Yes. And remember, this is a 3-year timeline before you
Application.
become authorized.
Right. So
I think what you miss out on if you start in the spring is the level of implementation. If you start in the fall and you start to get teachers trained this fall, they will start implementing units of study this year on a smaller scale. Now, you know, not official authorized, but they will start implementing these units of study, and you just push that back a little bit. So if they start in March, they would get training probably spring or summer. And so then they really wouldn't implement any of those units of study until the following year. So, you know, if you start this fall, the training happens this fall, and there is some level of implementation this year. So it kind of pushes it back a year.
okay. So if we put this application, if you don't do the application in the fall, then right now in September, then fall of 2019 is pushed back to fall of 2020. Is that?
You're just in an early, you would still be able to you would still be able to implement some units of study in the fall of 2019. You just
Okay.
wouldn't be as far down the road because your
Okay.
teachers would have gotten trained most likely in late spring, early summer.
Mhm.
And so they wouldn't be teaching that until the fall of 19. So they
Yeah.
would still be able to teach them.
So it does push.
It pushes it a little bit because if you get
Okay.
trained in the fall, then you start implementing this school year and then you have a rich, you just have more implementation next year because it's kind of a phase in.
How is this integrated into the curriculum for the if it's all school, do you have an option to opt out of that part of the curriculum if parents so choose, or how's it blended in?
So essentially what you do is you do a crosswalk between the IB standards and the North Carolina standards, and they fold very nicely together. So you just get a curriculum team to work together and look at where do you fit the different pieces. And a lot of it is about the way that you instruct kids more than it is the what. So a lot of it is around the way that you form your instruction, the type of activities that you're providing for students. And there's an additional global piece that students would do.
I also want to remind everyone that this September application is only for Marvin Ridge Middle School students. No one else can apply to be there, especially with the capacity being at 97%. So keep in mind, this conversation that we're having would only be for Marvin Ridge Middle School students. No one else would be able to have an opportunity. And I think about our struggles with dual language. We had this great idea to bring dual language immersion, K through 5. And we were like, oh no, what are they going to do in middle school? They're going to lose all of their content over 6th, 7th, and 8th before they can get into the high school and start taking dual language again. So we've struggled with this. Oh my goodness, no one planned for middle school. Now let's jump through hurdles and figure out what to do with middle school. And Dr. Houlihan has been working very hard to fix that gap. And so right now, I just want to take care of the 9th and 10th grade gap before we open it up and do more before we've even taken care of the 9th and 10th graders. I want to make sure that we agree.
Yeah, I understand exactly your point. Exactly. And I agree. But I think if what I'm hearing is because of the lead time necessary to implement it on the middle school, you basically, if you don't start now, then you're looking at 2020. Is that fair to say? So you got to look a little bit ahead on this.
But I think we're possibly putting the cart before the horse because we haven't taken care of the 9th and 10th grade yet. And keep in mind, when it comes to 9th grade, we're opening up to the whole county, not just one school.
Okay, so under these scenarios, you're looking to implement next fall in 9th and 10th grade.
An invitation to any rising 9th grader
Open it up
in
to
the
anybody.
entire county.
So we've filled the gap. We anticipate filling the high school gap fall of next year. Okay. So then we're looking, where do we go? Where do we take this next?
To see if there's really a demand, because we're either going to have applications or we're not.
Okay. So let's play that. Let's play that out. Let's say we implement this at Marvin Ridge Middle. Well, we start the application process. And like they said, they start. How does it hurt? Because you are adding more difficult
money without fixing the other problem.
No, we're already, I think everybody's on board with implementing 9 and 10.
The application process, they're moving forward.
Right. And I can't think of a better thing to invest to increase the challenge of our curriculum for the students that rise for it. And I would just, I'm not trying to say anything about anybody else, but I think, right,
cluster.
Because we have to implement it somewhere first to get all the bugs worked out. So you got to start somewhere.
Why not work out the bugs in 9th and 10th grade and open it up to the whole county?
No, I'm a complete agreement on that. I'm completely agreed. We need to implement 9 and 10. I think that is going to make the program explode because I'm thinking that students are not going to want to change schools for 11 and 12, open it up to wherever we're doing transportation. That to me is an entirely separate discussion, which I wholeheartedly agree, implement it tomorrow in 9th and 10th at Marvin Ridge High. I'm focused on, and maybe I'm looking too far out, but I'm thinking, okay, let's take this to its next progression. That's middle school. All right, well, how do we do that? Well, that's a 3-year process. So we have to start planting the seeds for the next next phase after the next phase. The next phase is 9 and 10. The next phase after that is middle school. And I think to have, continue to grow on a steady pace, we need to implement that. And there's a certain timeline to doing it. And it basically, we can start now that process. So I'm saying we move forward on the middle school. My personal opinion is we're all in agreement we're going to solve 9 and 10 at Marvin Ridge High.
No, for the whole county.
For everybody. We're going to implement that. Do it as fast as you can. And we can talk about how your proposal 1 and 2. I already gave you my 2 cents on that. But the other issue is, do we start to implement a model for the middle school somewhere to take this IB program to the next level?
Here's my concern. The Marvin Ridge Middle School students will now have an opportunity that none of the other 8 or 9 middle schools will have, so that they will be behind when they apply for 9th grade, because they will not have received IB in middle school in the other schools in the county. When they all come together in 9th grade, the only advantages will be for the Marvin Ridge Middle School students.
Well,
Not Porter Ridge Middle, Parkwood Middle, Sun Valley Middle.
Right. But we have to start somewhere. And it's only natural to start at Marvin Ridge High because the program's already in full implementation at Marvin Ridge Middle, because the program's already in full implementation in Marvin Ridge High. So that's a natural progression of the program.
Would you like to make a motion for the application process for?
I'll make a motion that we proceed and authorize Dr. Houlihan, who works with staff, to provide the necessary, work out the details and the necessary funding for a fall application for Marvin Ridge Middle to move forward with the whole school IB program.
Okay.
Sure. All
Do
for
I
that.
hear a second? Okay, hearing no second, I think we need to move forward with 9th and 10th grade.
I do have a quick comment
Okay.
about the idea of, preparing Marvin Ridge Middle students that puts other students at a disadvantage. I think when you do the application for 9th grade, you could set it up with a set aside for out of Marvin cluster students, that we're going to reserve X% of the seats for students who are coming in from outside, just to make that available. And if you fill them with other students. If you don't, then you have space for those Marvin Ridge Middle students above and beyond whatever their allotment was. You could solve it that way.
I'm sorry, Christina. Yes.
Do we have an idea of how many other students in the middle schools besides Marvin Ridge would be interested in this program, who would qualify for this program?
So at the middle school, there's no qualification process. Any student is eligible to participate. It is a whole school model at the middle school level.
So they're not broken out from the mainstream classroom. The entire school is receiving IB curriculum.
Correct.
Okay, okay.
Correct.
Does that make sense, Christina?
Yes.
Okay, so so the request today is Marvin Ridge Middle School, every student would receive IB curriculum. It does not. Not for me, Sturdivant or Ms. Helms.
I understand that we have to start somewhere, but if we can't offer it up as a whole to the county, I think it's going to cause a huge rift, in my opinion. I think we're going to get a lot of complaints as, you know, why is my child can't go there? Why, blah, 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 blah. You know, why is this not eligible at my child's school? I think it's going to open us up to a lot of criticism. But if we can't provide it for one, we shouldn't, you know, we've got to be equitable and make sure that we open it up to all. Just like we did, you know, the Splash program. Yes, we had a pilot program, and I understand that. However, a lot of our Splash programs are opened up to outside students that don't have one in their cluster.
I agree, Christina, and I think that's why I'm so encouraged that we're ready to start taking applications in 9th grade and not waiting until 11th and 12th. Because
I agree with that wholeheartedly.
I want to see where that goes.
I agree. Now, if we want to up the curriculum in all of our schools for middle school, then, you know, I think that's the path that we need to possibly look down. But just for one specific school, I think it sends a bad message that those kids are the only kids who can succeed in an IB program. And I just don't think that's the case by any means.
And I'll speak on that issue. I don't think there's any intent to say those kids are the only ones that can benefit or have access. I think I've been on record of saying this, in most school systems that I've worked in the past, where you see the strongest IB programs is where there's vertical alignment between the high school, middle school, and a feeder elementary. And as we've discussed, for historically, Marvin Ridge High School is kind of set on an island without a lot of communication, and folks have perceived it to be not a county-wide magnet, when actually that's the intent of it, is to have kids from all over the county apply to come in. So part of the reason that Mr. Eversole and the staff there were interested in the middle school option was to strengthen the overall IB program for that cluster. Again, that's because where it started. If we had other middle schools from all over the county that said, I want to go down this road of middle years program, I would support that 100%, because I'm a fan of IB, but we're not there yet. And so if the committee would like for us to come back in the spring with an update and possibly a revised timeline for if there are other schools that are interested in this, we can budget for it. We can continue to do work with 9th and 10th grade and see what those applications look like. We can delay this conversation. I have no problem doing that. But I think the overall intent here is to continue to provide and expand our access to programs beyond just one school, and if the demand is there. So we'll be glad to come back to you all in the spring with an update, delay the application process for Porter Ridge High School and for the middle school until we can open that up for 9th and 10th grade and see kind of where we are. Because again, unless this committee and the board is going to support this, I can't move forward. And I'd like for your support. If we're not there yet, we'll come back, no problem. But I do not want them submitting the applications unless the board is going to support it.
Well, let's talk about Porter Ridge High for a minute here. We left Dr. Vicente out, and just her proposal is March 2019 candidacy begins, the application process.
Right.
And we'll be in the middle of our budget too, so.
Well,
I make a motion that we delay the conversation.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
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 no,
All those opposed?
I think it's important that we give some feedback to Dr. Facin since she's here on her application process. And for my 2 cents, if you feel like you have, after talking to your community, you feel like you have the demand is there, I would invite you to bring this back.
I mean, you're the chair of finance. I've had to stand before the county and beg for money, ask for money. We're in the middle of our current budget. We just didn't budget for this today. That's why I think we need to come back to this and figure out what the request is in the next budget cycle.
If I can, if we do delay this until later in the year, and we can't budget this, then that's something that's going to delay the opening of the IB program at Porter Ridge, and that would delay the applications for ninth graders as well. And I think it would be advantageous for the school system to have 2 schools offering applications for ninth grade to get into the IB program instead of just 1 school at the start of this. So I think it would be good that both Marvin Ridge and Porter Ridge High School were able next year to open up applications for a ninth grade cohort to begin, which means I would need to apply this year to be able to start in 2020.
And your application would need to begin in March.
Correct.
Okay, so between now and March, our board needs to talk and get ready. But as far as Marvin Ridge Middle School, the request was for September, and that's too quick for me personally. I'm just one of 9. But I think others clearly have a concern. So I think we should definitely, and we're going to be in the middle of the budget, and we'll have to start seeing where we can get the application money from, the $14,000 or whatever. And so we can take this to the board and decide, do we want to have 2 high schools promoting this for ninth grade? But I think it's too soon to say middle school. I think we need to open this up to 9th and 10th graders before we begin a whole new curriculum at a school. So, Dr. Facin, I appreciate you acknowledging the need that it might be a good idea to open it up to 2 high schools instead of 1. And I think the board should consider that.
What could I just, so I'm clear in my mind of the timeline of the application process again proposed for Porter Ridge High. When you send your application in the spring, you have the $4,000 application fee, and then the $9,500 fee. What would the approximate time frame? I'm looking to see if that's going to be after July 1 in the next fiscal year. When would that be in that timeline scenario? When would you have to come up with that?
I can't remember if those are exactly together.
Oh, okay.
I think basically delaying this, you'd be delaying this for a year. We would have to have the conversations in the spring, budget for it for the next year, and then come back, and then the conversations would be applying in the fall. You'd have the middle school applying unless you wanted to apply in the spring. But if it really comes down to a budgetary issue, then you're looking at a year later.
But we're delaying it for a year at the middle school.
Correct.
Because
And
the application for the high school, for Porter Ridge High School, is March.
Spring, correct.
So we haven't missed the ball on that one. We have time to figure that out.
Well, no, because you're saying that's still in the same fiscal year. So if you're saying it's not taken into account in the budget, that's why I was asking if you had to come up, if you could delay coming up with at least part of the application till the next fiscal year, so we know it's coming and we put it in next year's budget. You pay the $4,000 and then you come up with the $9,500 a few months later.
And that's what I was referring to. If you
And
apply in the spring for Porter Ridge, you'd be using this year's funding to pay for that.
And so the next question would be, in your Porter Ridge budget, do you have the $9,500? Do you have the $4,000?
I'm meeting with the site-based
Mhm,
team next
mhm.
week, and that's something that we can discuss, and we may be able to include it in the budget. But that's something I have to discuss with the site-based team.
And the number one question is going to be, is what did you have to cut to come up with the money? Because we don't want to, we're real hesitant on cutting anything to find the money. So I would challenge you and the site-based team to figure out if it's in your budget to apply this year.
Sure, we'll do that. Thanks.
Yeah.
I will also say, I think that the IB organization also wants to see strong support from the district level, from the school board, from the district level. So, I think that if all of the money is required to come from the school, I don't know that they would even want us to go down that road. Because they won't move forward with us unless we have district support as
But
well.
it's my understanding Marvin Ridge came up with the money when they applied out of their school budget. That's what I was told.
And I was not there. I don't know about the application fee, but the
So how
recurring,
did they get it if the IB program doesn't look?
the recurring fee
Okay.
is paid by the district. So I'm not sure about the 4,000, but the recurring fee is paid by the district.
Well, technically, we give the school the money. So we're not talking about holding a bake sale to raise the money to do it. We're just talking about how it's.
I'm almost
think this is-
confident we were told that that Marvin Ridge paid for this. I'll go back and check my notes.
Again, I think based on the feedback, we can move forward with the 9th and 10th grade in terms of the cohort model and application, and then come back to this committee in the spring with an update on, additional demand at both Porter Ridge and the middle school, and kind of delay that application base at the middle school, and come back with Porter Ridge in the spring before the March application to see if this is something we want to move forward with as a school system, and we budget for it for future years, then we can do that. We'll be glad to come back.
Okay. And in the meantime, I think we did have some questions at the beginning of this conversation. We wanted to know how many applied this past year, how many came from the Marvin Ridge cluster, how many came from outside of the Marvin Ridge cluster, and where did those come from? And then finally, how many accepted and actually went, and where did they come from? So, okay, thank you. Okay, that brings us to House Bill 986.
All right. At this time, I do have some individuals I will call up, and that's from the directors from teaching and learning and school performance, if they would come up to the table at this time. And the reason I'm asking them up here is because a lot was put into action as a result of this House bill that was passed into law this summer, late summer, late June, early July.
June 22nd.
Okay. And that threw us into action, as well as all other school systems across the state, into what are we going to do about this new legislation? And just going back, if you look in your packet, we did put in there the session law. And of course, it starts off with making sure that we are doing our multiplication tables, and we are implementing cursive writing. All right. And there's some accountability there, in which we are. But when you go down to part 2, that's really the section of the law that has caused schools to really jump into action of dealing with students that may score a level 5, and putting those students in advanced math courses. The bill itself, or the law itself, goes into pretty good detail what this means at the middle and the high school levels. In middle school, basically it says if you're in 7th grade and you score level 5, we want you in Math 1 by the 8th grade. And this, my understanding of the law and why it was passed, is to make sure that students across the state that may have been left out of advanced math at some school, in some school systems. And so this law was really put in place to help those students, make sure that it's kind of forcing the hand that we are pushing those students into advanced math. What the law does not go into any detail whatsoever is, what does this look like at the elementary level in grades 4 and 5? When students score a level 5 on 3rd grade math or 4th grade math, what does that mean, advanced math, for elementary? Because we can't put them in Math 1, obviously, and so right away, our school system, the directors, our principals, directors, instructional coaches met to decide, okay, what does this look like in our schools? What is the pathway that we are now putting students on as a result of if they score a level 5, what are we doing to make sure that we are abiding by the law? And so principals, everybody came together and developed what would be options until we can define what this is for our school system in grades 4 and 5. So that's really what the bill was all about. And like I said, it really spelled it out very well for middle and high. We know what that is, but it's the elementary that we're having to figure out what that looks like in Union County Public Schools for grades 4 and 5. What is advanced math? And so at this time, I'm going to let Dr. Crawford kind of talk about what the process was to building options for students currently. As I said, this was at the last hour and 6 weeks before school starts. What are we going to do? And so that's this process that Dr. Crawford will talk about that took place over the summer.
Good morning. So we did, as Dr. Breedlove mentioned, we did get our group of principals together, representatives from each of our elementary schools. We had invited the level AIG coordinator to come to that meeting as well. And we did have the discussion about what does this look like in elementary? Because in elementary, we have a lot of schools have the flexibility to have a lot of different structures in place. So as an example, some schools may departmentalize, which means in 4th grade, there's maybe 2 teachers that teach math, and then there's 2 teachers that teach reading. And so there are different structures in place. And so there are a lot of variables to think about, which makes it a little bit tricky for elementary. But one thing that we did decide as a group is how can we, no matter what structures we have in place, whether I'm a school and we departmentalize, or I'm a school and we do not departmentalize, whether I'm a school that has a 30-minute enrichment intervention block, or I don't have that block, what are some commonalities of ways that we can support these level 5 students regardless of the structure that we have in place? So, so the conversations led to, well, we can all provide differentiated instruction within our classroom, which teachers naturally do that anyway. But it's more than just your regular differentiated instruction. It would be meeting with those level 5 students specifically in small group instruction, coordinating with the AIG teacher. The AIG teacher and the regular ed teacher could collaborate on a regular basis to talk about the level 5 students. To share resources and materials of how that classroom teacher can specifically differentiate for those level 5 students. So that was a big commonality with the conversation, was the differentiation with those level 5 students. In addition, because some schools have an intervention enrichment block, that is a way that some schools can support those level 5 students as well, is during that enrichment block. Maybe the AIG teacher supports those level 5 students, or maybe again, it's the teacher collaborating with the AIG teacher to support those level 5 students. So regardless, the commonalities are that the AIG teacher and the classroom teacher will collaborate, have ongoing conversations and meetings about the level 5 students, and share materials and resources that would be different than what the other students are getting in the classroom. So those were the real commonalities that we all the principals agreed to, that that they could do to support level 5 students due to the various structures within their schools.
So the question that board members are getting, and we received emails all summer from parents because of this House bill, okay? The feedback that we are getting, the request that we are getting is that their student has consistently tested level 5, and they were not accepted into AIG. And the AIG teacher now is helping with the curriculum for these, that the proposal is for the AIG teacher to be putting together coursework with the mainstream classroom teacher. So the request that we are consistently getting is, my student, it tested level 5. I would like for my student to be in AIG. So what was the feedback you got in your meetings? Why? Because now it sounds like it's more work for the AIG teacher as opposed to just allowing that student to move into the AIG classroom.
So one of the structures that's in place, and again, it's not consistent for every school, is that some schools are able to place their level 5 students in the AIG classroom. And so the reason for this is because if there is a school where the AIG teacher has maybe 15 students, identified AIG students in there, well, that teacher can teach more students. And so if that school has, let's say,
Open seats.
10, right, maybe 10 level 5 students, then that's a possibility. But other schools, and I'll give you an example, if, let's say, well, one school, for example, has about 42 level 5 fourth grade students. So, of course, that's not possible to put those students in that AIG classroom. And so when I say that there's different structures and so many variables to think about, that's an example of one where one school might be able to, the AIG teacher may be able to.
So we only have one AIG teacher in our elementary schools. We don't have 2.
It depends. It depends on
So
the number.
schools
Some
get
schools
2.
have 2.
So so some schools get 2, some schools get 1. Do some schools get 3?
I don't think that any of our elementary schools
Okay,
have
so
3.
if we have an elementary school that has 42 level 5 students, how hard, I mean, what's the process to add another AIG teacher, another AIG classroom?
Well, it would come down to funding, being able to fund a teaching position.
Okay.
And that comes from the state, and this was a state mandate.
But they
And-
don't provide the funding.
State doesn't provide the funding. The state only provides funding for our AIG program for, I believe it's 4% of the total population,
They provide flat funding
no matter
with
how
no
many AIG
consideration
kids
how many you have in there.
Correct. Which I have
Which,
an
of
issue
course,
with.
Yeah, well, yeah.
So the issues that we have at the elementary level are, number one, adding additional positions. Number two, classroom space. Do you have a space for another classroom teacher? Number three, if you don't add another teacher, how can you solve that? And then that comes down to training, certification, and curriculum development. And so all of the, again, 6 weeks out after the legislature passed this bill, we as a system, I think we're just kind of trying to figure out, how do you do this when all of your elementary schools have different staffing models, have different spaces, and have different demographics.
Okay, is the 4% times the school population or times the Union County Public School, the 41,500?
Yes, overall,
Which one?
total
Yes,
total
school
students.
Total.
Yes,
Total
school
population.
system.
Because some elementary schools are bigger and smaller than others.
Correct.
So I wanted
Mhm.
to know where the 4% came from. So how do we determine which schools get 2 AIG teachers and which schools get 1 AIG teacher?
So it depends on the number of students who are AIG identified at that particular school.
Just like in some schools, you have one EC resource teacher And in some schools, you might have 3 or 4, depending on the number of students that have an IEP that dictates that you have to be served by an EC certified teacher.
So I had requested a matrix to understand what is AIG certified. Can you point me to that? Is it
So
in
it's
our-
titled UCPS AIG Achievement or Placement Matrix.
I'm having trouble finding it in the packet.
What is it? What does it look like? Is it the black and white chart? Okay. I saw that somewhere.
Yes. No, it's not in there. It's not in there.
Um,
So we'll make that available to you right now.
okay, so
So it's not in the packet.
it's not in the packet. Okay, we'll stop looking. Okay, okay. Because
Yeah,
So here-
we're making that.
So
we can
here's
talk further.
a little bit of my confusion. It's my understanding that we have students in the AIG classroom that tested at level 3 and 4 in math. Yet we are denying access to students that have tested level 5 in math. And so I would really like some feedback. How do students, and I think that's why the AIG matrix is important. How do you explain to a parent whose kid is clearly thriving in math? They scored a level 5, but we're telling them, no, we're not going to allow your child access into the AIG classroom when the kids that are allowed into AIG are at 3 or 4. How do we get past that?
So I think and I'll respond. And if you've not met board members, Cynthia Hodgson is our new director of federal programs. She oversees now AIG ESL. She took Lisa Gibson's place. So
Okay.
welcome.
Welcome.
Cynthia.
You picked a great first meeting.
I think fundamentally, this is just my off the cuff response, I guess, is school systems in North Carolina your AIG programs are governed on a 3-year plan. And every 3 years, we have to rewrite that plan that gets submitted and approved by DPI. This is the year that as a system, we will be rewriting that plan. And so I would assume sometime this summer, we'll be submitting that for review. And this is a year-long process to figure out, do we keep the same model? Do we want to do anything different? That's going to be a part of this year. Once that is submitted, you're bound to live and breathe by that plan for 3 years. And so what happens in our plan is I may be wrong, Cynthia, but I would assume in that plan, we have to let the state know how we identify students because they don't tell us how we should identify students. We have the ability 3 years ago or decades ago, whenever that decision was made, the system decided how they were going to identify students. So the good news is we have a lot of flexibility to determine that. What has happened is, and UCPS is not alone, and in most AIG programs that I've ever seen, there is an aptitude part of identification, which would be, your IQ or, verbal, nonverbal, different kinds of tests. There is an achievement part, which might be your level 5 on an EOG or an EOC. And then there are other factors like report cards. And some school systems do teacher recommendations, which I don't agree with. There are multiple different parts that come up with a matrix. And so for a parent whose child might have scored a level 5, that might be one part of the qualification, but that child may not have met all the other criteria as part of the matrix that we've developed. That's why they would not be identified or labeled as such as AIG. I'm not saying that's wrong or right. That's just the state of the current affairs.
And that is a great explanation. And but here's the challenge. We're talking about math. So you're talking about, verbal, nonverbal, reading, writing, but we're talking about math. So my question, and we have AIG math, we have AIG reading, some get into both, some get into one or the other.
Yep.
But today's conversation is math. So I don't think there should be a verbal, nonverbal component on an IQ aptitude if a child is clearly excelling in math and needs more rigor and would benefit from that AIG teacher, as opposed to being in a classroom. And I feel like we're putting more burden on the classroom teacher. The classroom teacher is now having to help the students that are below grade level, on grade level, and now clearly AIG math gifted. So now we're asking that classroom teacher to be supported by the AIG teacher for math, but the student's not allowed to go into the math AIG classroom.
If you'll look at that on the matrix,
Okay.
you were talking about the nonverbal and verbal and mathematics. One of the pieces, the components, is the subtest content aptitude. And if you'll see, one of those is a mathematics subtest. So that would be the component that would meet the criteria. The student would meet the criteria if receiving a 98th percentile on one of the mathematics subtests.
But that's reading and math combined.
No, that's a subtest. The full is the first one. If you look at pathway 1A, full scale aptitude, that's the combined. The third box over are subtests. So they actually have a mathematics subtest. That's how they determine the student may be AIG in math, but not in reading, or in reading and not in math.
I think the emphasis on the legislation, which I philosophically I wholeheartedly believe in, is around access to advanced courses. And so in some cases, that access is defined in some of our schools by you're going to be able to get into that AIG class because of all the different reasons Dr. Crawford mentioned. There's seats available, there's space, there might be more than one teacher. But that doesn't mean that the child by the law should be identified or labeled AIG, because they haven't might not have gone through our local process for identification or met that identification.
So what I think I'm understanding and hearing is House Bill 986 was specifically written for 7th grade scores. I'm reading it right here. It says 7th grade. For their 8th grade ability to be in a higher level math for 8th grade. It is not written for elementary.
That is correct. It's left up to really the LEAs to determine what advanced coursework is for at the elementary level. It doesn't mention anything about AIG as being the definition for advanced coursework.
I'm not seeing any mention of elementary.
Correct.
Okay.
It doesn't, but it says grades 3 through 12.
3 and above.
3 and above.
Yeah.
Sorry. 3 and above.
Anybody's doing
It
EOG.
pulls it in by saying that, but it doesn't give any examples of what they really mean by grade for advanced coursework. Just here it is. And they had a webinar. DPI did a webinar, and kind of going through that because everybody was scrambling. So DPI put out a webinar of their interpretation of the law because they get it about the same time as we do. And so, they're saying, okay, it was just a way for LEAs to talk and to hear what, we could type in questions in that. And it was interesting on, a lot of it, they said, it's really going to be determining what that is for elementary. But once again, they did not go in and say, this is what you need to do. They did leave it open and to interpretation for the LEAs, and they left it open to some LEAs may choose to do nothing right now until they get a plan together what this really means. And that's written in here as well in the language that an LEA may choose to back up and punt and just say, look, we're going to keep things going right now the way it is until we can put a plan together what this means for our students.
So when the 4% rule is statewide, so there's 115 school districts in the state, and we're all being treated the same, 4% for AIG funding. And Union County Public Schools is a very high performing county. So 4% may not fit
Correct.
all LEAs.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Based on the latest numbers that I have, our percentage of AIG is 11.7.
11.7% of UCPS elementary students
Total.
all are labeled AIG. And we're only getting 4%.
Of
Okay.
funding.
Of funding,
Uh-huh.
4%.
So the difference is being funded through local dollars.
Correct. I would assume. I don't know.
Not bad.
You're funding
Can-
your positions.
Mhm.
12% is funding your positions
And our,
versus 11% of your students qualifying. That's not.
Well, 11.7% of our students are labeled AIG and are in AIG, and we are funding the difference through local dollars.
the state provides this year, it's $1,340.97
For one
Each
student.
Student.
for each student. Mhm.
We take a pot of money and we divvy it up to how many of state dollars, how many AIG teachers we can hire.
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay,
That's around $2.21 million if my math is
so
correct.
when this happened, June 22nd, and then everyone had to figure out what are we going to do? How are we going to offer advanced math to level 5 students? Did our elementary schools open up seats? If there were, some schools may not have had any open seats, but for the schools that had open seats in AIG, were students placed in those, were level 5 students placed in open seats?
Schools, yes, schools did. However, I know schools had to also consider if I have some open seats, but I don't have enough for all of my level 5,
Mhm.
then I may not do that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a
Mhm.
variation.
Mm-hmm.
How did they
Can
get
I-
around? How did they get around the matrix?
The matrix is
The matrix is
For
for identification.
AIG.
They're not. What she's saying is they may be being taught math by the AIG teacher, but they're not identified AIG.
But they're in an AIG class.
Correct.
correct.
So, and they're getting a curriculum. So what's the difference?
They're not labeled AIG.
So who cares? They're getting the same curriculum.
The students know.
Well, yeah,
Can't
you
be
get
in
the
the
title.
classroom.
You get the title.
I would like to kind of interject something about this House bill.
Okay.
Because what it does is it really puts level 5 kids on the same trajectory as your AIG students. So if we think of the end results,
Mhm.
you know, in high school, the senior year,
Mhm.
where do we want our kids to end up? And then we plan backwards to think, then what do we need to do in order to get all, you know, those kids at the end of that trajectory? And so to me, this bill isn't about AIG or it's
Mhm.
more about helping kids to have access to those advanced courses.
I agree
Right.
with you 1,000%.
Yep.
Unfortunately, parents are coming to us
Right.
because their student is a level 5
Mhm.
and they would like for their child to have access to math AIG and are being told no.
And I certainly understand that. And I think that, you know, this all happened so quickly that
Right.
there
Everybody's-
wasn't really a lot of time to communicate. We have sent out communication to parents, but, you know, I think we need to clearly communicate. But is this a good time? Can I talk about what we're proposing for advanced math for our 4th and 5th grade students? Because it's not even necessarily about giving them access to the AIG curriculum, the Singapore math, which is what we use. But I think it's more about advanced math. So I know in middle school, it's more of a compact math. So in 4th grade, what we propose to do is to create a compact math of 4th and 5th grade standards. And, teachers could teach that. And then the same thing for 5th and 6th grade as well. Then that sets them on that trajectory.
And bingo, you get away from the AIG label and the
Correct.
matrix. But here's my
So we're
issue.
going to do away with AIG?
No,
No.
no,
I'm
it's an
talking about
alternative.
for level 5
Yeah.
students where this House bill says
Right.
advanced course.
Right. Here's my real challenge with this, and you said it yourself, inconsistent implementation.
Correct.
Okay, so you got a classroom where now and I call it mainstream teacher, is now responsible for that small group that's getting AIG curriculum. How are they being assessed versus their general classroom that's some good, not so good at math, some middle of the road? Are they getting the same test? I think it is critical. Either AIG setting where they have it available or a compact math where I think the pullout with not individualized, but the advanced instruction is critical. I think it's too much a strain. I think the assessment, i.e. testing and quizzing process, is too difficult on the mainstream teacher. I think we either need to departmentalize or we need to devise a pullout intervention enrichment block. I assume that's a pullout.
Yes.
Okay. To address these specific students. And I like the idea because that's what you're doing in middle school, is you using the compacted math to get around the AIG hurdles and matrix, correct?
No.
That's the way you're addressing it there? No?
For this purpose.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yes,
For this
for this
purpose.
purpose.
Yeah.
Compacted AIG and a compacted advanced.
Okay,
Right,
so
right.
I have a quick question. So the AIG teacher has his daily classwork, homework, and test. Then the classroom teacher has her classwork, homework, and test. So now we're going to have to come up with a compact math curriculum, classwork, homework, test. So now we're having to have 3 different tests. So there's going to be the classroom test and homework assignments so that they can prepare for the test. Then we're going to have the compacted classwork, homework, and a different test for the compacted math. And then the AIG teacher has his classwork, homework, and AIG test. So now we're going to have 3 different. No, so
For 3 different sets of children.
Each set gets its own.
So one classroom teacher is going to be in charge of the compacted math, homework, classroom, and test. She or he's going to have to come up with that whole plan, and their mainstream math.
Well, I think that's
a lot. That's
I
a
know.
lot for one teacher to handle.
Well, I think it's going to take us, we certainly want to put a timeline in place, but it's going to take us some time to, first of all, develop this curriculum. But as we're doing that, then we need to have some ongoing conversations with principals about how can we do this now? If we create this compacted math curriculum, then how can we do this?
So what's happening for the level 5 math students at this moment? Are they getting anything right now, or are we still in development?
So they are they're collaborating with the AIG teacher and getting some materials and resources from the AIG teacher.
Do you know?
What's happening right? Sorry, go ahead.
Well, do you know how many in how many schools this need has been met by putting them in the AIG class setting versus in the mainstream class with advanced curriculum, those numbers?
Isn't it
About a
about
third.
nine?
Isn't it about a third are been pushed into an AIG setting?
Yes.
One
About a-
third of our elementary schools,
Have
so about
chosen-
Have
11.
been able
Yeah.
to push into
Others are
AIG.
differentiating. The other schools are differentiating in that. So they were depending on the school and the size and what's available, principals problem solve to try and fix that with their students at their school and
based on their existing resources and staffing. And so,
Mm-hmm.
you know, if you
Mhm.
look at it this way, I mean, because of the timing, we're kind of left to say, how do we do this? And to be honest with you, it might be a situation where if we want to go down the road of developing a compacted math for fourth, fifth, sixth, in some cases that might require us in the spring to come back to the board and say, that means we're going to have to allocate, I'm just making up a number, 20 additional enrichment teachers just to serve our level 5 kids, because it's impossible or very hard for a regular classroom teacher from a differentiation standpoint to basically you're planning and assessing multiple different types.
And you would do that because the district has made a decision not to allow a level 5 student into AIG because of their verbal and nonverbal
Unless they
scores.
qualify. And so I think, and that's part of the ongoing conversation, which is as we kind of work in a parallel track, how do we solve this situation as we rewrite the AIG plan and serve your level 5 kids, and what will be a consistent model across all elementary schools? And unfortunately, because of the time, we weren't able to be in a position to figure that out. And we're just kind of stuck with the current system that we have, but we are committed to figuring that out for the future. And if that means we would need to add additional positions or look at funding for curriculum training, we would come back to the full board with that request. And so that's kind of, we're trying to balance the short-term pressing need now versus the long-term model, where across all elementary schools, we have a similar way to go about doing it.
And the state does allow us some time to put something in place, because we, several of us participated in a webinar, and they realized that it might take some time to put something in place.
Is a virtual advanced math class too early for a 4th and 5th grader?
Online?
Yeah, online.
Well, no, they go in to a classroom or whatever, a pull out, and they have and so all of the kids from across the county are watching the same teacher and having the same, is that too early for a 4th and 5th grader?
I think that model, it would be challenging because the teacher wouldn't be able to listen in on conversations and collect that data.
Okay.
So basically, we're trying to figure out the best Band-Aid we can put on this thing until we gain some time to really be able to do what we want to do.
To write a compacted curriculum for the level 5 students. And we did that for middle school, and it's a lot easier in middle school. Dr. Healy, can you explain what compacted math would look like in middle school, so you have an understanding that we can back up and say, okay, this is what it would look like at the elementary level. What did we do for 6th or 7th or 8th? And what does that look like?
I know in middle school it's called transitional math, where like the first half of the year you get your 7th or 8th grade math, and then the second half of the year you get the math 1 or math 2.
And it all changes depending on when you, on this bill, on this law, when you score the level 5. What trajectory does that put you on? And if I'm in 6th grade and I score level 5, what do I take in 7th grade?
So at this point, we have lots of options. If you come in as a 7th grader for the first time making a level 5, you would take a class that's 7th grade and the pieces of 8th that fit nicely with the standards, which is something that we use some pieces of. Usually it's 6th and half of 7th, 7th and half of 8th. No, the other half of 7th and all of 8th. This one is all of 7th and half of 8th. Knowing that when you get to math 1 as an 8th grader, you would still have some components of 8th grade that need to be taken and then finish out. It might not take an entire semester. It might then finish out with a math 1 high school credit.
So the way that I would envision this for elementary would be you take your, let's say, your fourth grade level 5, you take your fourth grade standards, and then you think about what is that next step. Look at taking that same standard. What is that next step that would, take them into some of those fifth grade standards? I'll just give you a simple analogy. So like in first grade, we are adding 2-digit numbers. And so maybe that next step that carries over to the next grade would be 3-digit or 4-digit numbers. So you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it would be something like that where you're teaching those standards, but when your kids are ready, then you're taking that same standard into that next level.
When will we, or maybe it's already begun, when will we be initiating the new plan for AIG to present to DPI? When does that process begin? Because this is the year that we have to present our new plan. So when does that process start, or has it already started? And when is that due to DPI?
It will start. It has already started. The conversations have already begun, and I envision that plan being ready mid-April, because it's my understanding that it would be due June 30th.
For implementation next year, next
Mhm.
fall?
Yes, sir. Because those are local plans that are approved by DPI. So
Well, I would like to see some flexibility built into that, taking into accommodation this new law.
absolutely.
I agree.
Okay, so what do we tell the parent who is not lucky enough to be one of the third that they were able to accommodate, had slots to accommodate for a pull-out class or a intervention enrichment block, but doesn't feel that their child is being challenged in math? Where do we go with that?
I think the first thing you do is you ask them to go visit with the school administration and with the classroom teacher to express their concerns and see if there's a way for the localist of level, the principal and maybe the instructional facilitator or the teacher can have that conversation with that parent to explain this is what we're doing. That would be the first request I would make. I think secondly, if there's continuing to be angst, then you refer them to Dr. Crawford or Dr. Breedlove to explain kind of the position that our schools are in and what we're doing to try to remedy this. Again, at the end, for this year, we have some inconsistencies because of the current structures that we have in schools. That's not the school's fault. I think what we're trying to do is figure out longer term, how do we make this consistent across all elementary schools so that we don't have those concerns in the future. But right now, we're limited with what we have.
And I think it's important for parents to understand that being a level 5 student and some of the resources and support that they're getting, it does put them on that trajectory to have access to those advanced level math classes. I think that's important for them to know.
Obviously, I'm not a teacher, but I'm just thinking this is putting
But you're a parent.
right. Do we envision in this situation where they're all in the mainstream class, they're going to be given more challenging material, and they're going to receive different evaluation, different tests and quizzes based on their material, not the mainstream, correct? The whole class is not going to get the same test because you got these kids over here you're pulling into a small group and they're getting
Compacted math,
AIG math, whatever you want to call it, more challenging curriculum in math. Are they getting the same test as everybody else in the class?
Well, I mean, the test is about the standards, the standards that you're teaching. So the assessment would be based upon whatever standards that they're covering.
So
the answer is no. They'll have different tests.
They'll have a classroom test, and then they'll have a compacted math test.
Well, we're not there yet, but with the compacted math.
Well, not compacted math.
You're
The way we're
talking about
handling
right
it this
now.
year, how we're handling it right now, you got a small group taking Singapore math, curriculum, what have you, the
AIG.
AIG curriculum, we're put in a small group. Then it's time for the whole class to take a math test. Are they all getting the same test? Or is your small group getting a different test and the rest of the class getting a mainstream math class, we'll call it for lack of better. How does that going to work?
I don't know that I can answer that. I think it just depends on the teacher and what those students, what that small group is receiving. Because sometimes it's not about that they're learning different standards, but they are being enriched at a much deeper level.
Right. So the testing needs to be more rigorous. You got to test at the same rigor that they're being taught, or you're not challenging somebody, right? Who
Depends on the teachers.
I think it depends on what the students are learning at that time, if that makes sense.
Okay, so is the principal responsible for the monitoring of this in their individual school, or does it go up the food chain to you to see? Are we getting, make sure I ask this the right way, are we getting consistent, thank you, curriculum for these small groups that are in the mainstream class? So somebody's watching that at least that process is consistent. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. I mean, definitely, that is something that principals, should monitor, will monitor. And the instructional coaches
Okay.
can help with that as well.
Am I wrong? Because I'm thinking this law really, if you think about it, this law really shouldn't have affected us, because our goal is to challenge each child to the level of their abilities, right?
That's correct.
We didn't need a law to tell us to do this.
Well, maybe not. Maybe we didn't. But there are situations where students are testing high and performing high in middle school, and they're not getting into Math 1 in 8th grade.
Well, that's not
So-
acceptable. I don't care. I don't need a law to tell me that that's not acceptable. I don't think anybody
Well,
at this
many
table needs.
parents in Union
Well-
County will tell you that has happened.
And the parent always has the right to opt out if they decide it's not.
No, I'm
not.
talking about students that are performing at a high level, level 5, and did not receive Math 1 in 8th grade.
Well, if I ever, I mean, I'd
It-
sure as
it
heck want to know
happens
why.
every year.
I'd challenge why that ever
And
happened.
sometimes it's because they said there's not a seat in the classroom.
Well, I would say a response to that would then be to contact my office, performance directors, and teaching and learning directors, because that shouldn't be happening. And I was a former principal, and I know that sometimes people get stuck in old ways, and you have to convince them that that's not who we are as a school district. And it doesn't take much, but it does. There are those conversations of, okay, then why don't we, if we have enough demand that's going to push over a particular classroom, then it's
Capacity.
up to us to solve that problem so that student is not turned away for an advanced math class like a Math 1, because that's really what this is all about, is what is the trajectory of getting those students to Math 1 earlier if they are a high functioning math student. That's really what this is all about. And as soon as we get students into Math 1, it really takes care of itself after that, because now I go Math 2. We even embedded a Math 1 honor. So you go Math 1 honors, Math 2 honors, Math 3 honors. Now you're looking at either pre-calc or you're getting into AP statistics and a lot of other pathways for students. Ultimately, we want to get them by their junior or senior year, depending on what options they have available to them, getting to Calc AB or BC by their senior year, which is really maxing out of what a high school math student does.
Which is really difficult for a high school student to achieve if they have a part-time job, or they're helping pay the bills at home, or helping put food on the table, or taking care of a younger sibling.
Mm.
So if a child misses out on an opportunity in elementary school or is prevented from having an opportunity for Math 1 in middle school, and we know what's happened, so they're way behind in high school. And now we're asking that already stretched high school student to double up and go to summer school to catch up.
We make that option available. It's not ideal. It's best to follow the
Get 'em
path,
early.
get them
Get 'em
early.
early.
And that's what a compacted fourth grade math and a compacted fifth grade math will do, is it will capture that student early. We can't ask the student just to be successful because we put them in there. We all understand we have to support that student. And if we're going to compact the math, a lot is coming at that, not only at that fourth grader or fifth grader, but at the parents too, because we're all parents and we know what that means at home at the dinner table at night. And so we are fully aware that to do a compacted math, we have to make sure the support mechanisms are there and we're not turning students away. If they're scoring a level 5, they need to be pushed.
Or 4.99, or whatever that little bar
Yes, ma'am.
bar
Yes,
thing
ma'am.
comes in from your EOG, and you're right there.
But this is
Absolutely.
specifically this law has forced us to look and see that there is an opportunity here because there's an obvious gap from a student not meeting our AIG matrix, but they are still excelling, and we got to make sure they're challenged.
Let's
And
bring
our
them up there.
Band-Aid right now is not consistent on the elementary school level of meeting that. And I know I appreciate everybody. We could have just punted the whole darn thing and said, hey, we're going to take the year and figure this out, which I'm sure a lot
But the
have
kids
done.
who got a level 5 in May are now going to be a year behind while
The fifth
we sit and
graders,
figure it out.
the fifth graders are sitting here and we're trying to figure it out as best we can.
Yes, sir.
And I am concerned. I'll say this again. I'm concerned for the group that is in a small group in the mainstream class, and the teacher, maybe the help from the AIG instructor should be giving it more credence. But I'm just saying that puts a lot of pressure on that classroom teacher, in my estimation, to make sure that small group of their students are challenged equally, as well as the students that are not up to that level in math, and trying to get them up and keep the whole lid on the whole classroom at the same time. I'll tell you what, my hat's off to you. We'll get this figured out. And the parents, I just want everybody to take away what this has been dumped on us and how we're trying to react to it as best we can.
It almost makes you wonder if you have to have a block format for math in elementary schools, so that fourth and fifth grade,
Departmentalize. Yeah.
for fourth and fifth grade, the math student knows, okay, I go to this teacher for traditional fourth and fifth grade math. I'm going to compacted math. I'm going to go to this classroom, or I'm going to go to this classroom for AIG, which is what they're doing for AIG. And I respect that it was mentioned that this House bill is not about AIG, but as a parent, I will tell you it is about AIG, because the AIG kids that are identified out of third grade, and we all mature and have brain development at different paces. And it's unfortunate that a test in third grade would label a kid forever through our system. And it does. And because the only ones that got into AIG math in fourth and fifth grade are the ones that are labeled for AIG math in middle school. And those are the ones that automatically get Math 1 or Math 2 when they enter high school. They've already got Math 1 or Math 2 under their belt. And then next thing you know, you've got a ninth grader sitting in the same classroom with a junior, or, in a junior class, or juniors are now taking Math 3 with ninth and 10th graders. I know this firsthand. So, it is about AIG. I want to be very clear. It doesn't say AIG. This is about AIG because those are the kids that are getting the math 1 before everyone else.
And I understand that and that mentality, especially as a parent. What I will say is that with a plan to do starting with the end in mind in going back and using now what is in law for a level 5, it is bringing those students up to that challenging standards mastery to push them in the same general directions, so that those students who have the level 5 that may not be in the scored 98 percentile on the COGAT exam, that they still have that same opportunity to get to a math 1 by 7th grade or by 8th grade, depending on.
Which is exactly why, Mr. Size, this law was important.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that a
Mhm.
level 5 student cannot be denied a seat in math 1.
And so
Because it
To get 'em there.
happens.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
what we would
It's
like to do.
adding
is
the
develop
criteria.
that pathway, and we'll figure it out what that looks like, because if we just say, okay, it's just going to, that pathway is going to be differentiated in the classroom, our teachers need to have a seat at the table and work through that.
Agreed.
What does that look like for me? How can I ensure that table there with the level 5s that I know, how do I ensure that they're getting what they need in the support, as well as all the other students that I'm supposed to support in that classroom?
Mhm.
Or some schools may say, we wanted to try and bring consistency across the board of what that looks like, to make all of our parents feel comfortable with where their child is and what school that their child is. And I'm been ensured that my child will have that opportunity to be a 7th grade math 1 student or an 8th grade math 1, because I want them to be at calculus AB by their senior year, because that
Junior and senior year.
senior year, depending on what, and then it's only an opt out. If the students are already in that pathway, now you as a parent can opt your child out if you don't want that, but this is automatic.
Right.
And this is important because up until this conversation, students that had growth or maturity beyond that 3rd grade test has already been put on a track that they will not make it to pre-cal. They will not make it to calculus. So next thing you know, their chances of getting into an engineering program at NC State, Clemson, Virginia Tech, we've had this conversation, is very small.
Yeah.
Because they don't have exposure to calculus.
Go to community college for an extra year.
So we
Five-year
do
point.
screen them again in 6th grade, and we do accept a lot more at that point. There's a very formal screening in
Okay.
6th
Okay.
grade, but there is a review of data at every grade level. But the next big one after 3rd is 6th grade.
So they get another COG
that we use.
test in 6th grade.
Okay.
We have used the InView in the past. We've just changed this past year to COGAT for 6th graders. So there is another chance there. And there also is a criteria for non-identified students in math. We
Okay.
don't have that same in English for
Thank you
English
for
1, but we
mentioning
do have
that.
for Math 1.
Thank you.
Ms. Merrill, if I can, I'd like to kind of bring this around. The reason I asked for it to be an action item, I'd like to put it to staff. I want to talk about this year. I'm talking about the 5th graders right now. I would like staff, and I don't hope you can't tell me right now, because if you do, the answer is no. I want, in this budget year, in this school year, for those 2/3 of kids that are not in AIG program, not being pulled out, I understand we want to develop the curriculum long term, but I would like to have staff, I'm charging staff with developing a better short-term fix, more consistent for these students that qualify under HB 906, i.e. be in some type of intervention enrichment block. And here's the deal. You tell me if it can be done. Here are the tough choices you have to make from a money standpoint. It's going to come down to money because it's going to take people. What it's going to take, if it can be done, it's going to take A, B, or C. And all of them aren't pretty, but that's your choices if you want to try and make it happen this year. Is that a fair challenge? If y'all say, you know, can I put that to you? Can you take that challenge for me?
Can you restate?
All right.
Guess.
Here's-
I just want to make sure I'm
All
very
right.
clear before
I know.
answer. I'm
I
sorry.
want a more consistent fix on the elementary school level. Okay.
The
You
current
said
mo-
a
the
third,
current- yeah,
a
current
third of the
model is not.
kids we've been able to accommodate by getting them in a, I love this name, intervention enrichment block. They're pulled out. 2/3 of them are the responsibility of the mainstream teacher in the mainstream class, and we're trying to give them more challenging curriculum to challenge them. I would like to charge you with a better fix, and I think what you're going to come back and say, it's going to take X number of more teachers to make this happen. If that's possible. I hope you're smiling because you think it's possible. It's just going to take money. But
She has
yeah,
ideas.
okay. I like you already. So that's the charge I'm throwing at you. I don't want to. I want to try and fix as much as we can of this year. I know it takes time for a long-term fix. I am certainly sympathetic to that. I'm just challenging us to find a better fix for those 2/3 of the kids that need it. Y'all willing?
And I understand what you're saying, but I also want us to have the mindset too that this year isn't a wash for those kids because again, they're on that trajectory.
Right.
Yes, we've got to make sure that they're going to be
But the fix is not consistent.
right.
That's
I agree.
that's
I
the
hear what
part
you're saying.
I have that I think the challenge we have.
Right. But I just don't want anybody to walk away.
No, they're not. We're not.
Or
just,
any parents to feel like, well, they, our official plan isn't in place right now, and so this year is a wash for my child.
Y'all are doing the best you can
It's
with what
not.
you were given at the last minute. They changed the game. I get it. It happened. Unfortunately, it happens too much, but that's the world we live in, right? So I'm saying y'all did the best you could under the circumstances you were given. Now you tell me, if possible, what circumstances have to change, i.e. we give up this to get this. And I can only, I can't speak for anybody else. They might say, well, I'm sorry, we can't do that. We're just going to have to, get the real fix in next year or at some other point.
Or we just have breakout classes for math,
Here's what I will
which
answer.
prepares
that.
them for middle school. They're changing classes. It gets them ready.
I will
Get
say
departmentals,
that this group of individuals, as well as our teaching staff across the district and anyone that's at the table here in leadership positions, we're problem solvers.
Mhm.
And this is it. We understand that this is a problem. And all I can say is challenge accepted. We will
Good
go
man.
back to the drawing board and seeing what other options may be out there that we want to look at, and what would option A look like? How much would that cost? Option B, we already know what option we have now and what schools have chosen. And ultimately, if we choose an option, how much disruption to already what's in place? Is that really
Right.
what we want to do or not? If it doesn't cause a disruption and it's going to benefit students in the long run and it's going to bring consistency throughout the district, that's our ultimate goal. And then developing on the second side of that is then taking all of this, developing this compacted idea for the future years of what this would look like for any student scoring at level 5 that might not be an AIG, but what does their pathway now look like? So I can hand them a matrix, so to speak, and say, okay, this is what pathway your child is on right now, until you say otherwise. But we are pushing them towards this pathway to make it very clear for our parents that because your child scored a level 5, they have now entered this, and we are, we want to get them on that level.
Good man. So what you got is homework. That's due fast. That's due pretty darn quick.
Yes, sir.
And then you got a class project that's longer term.
Right.
So I have a request, and maybe this report already exists, and if it doesn't exist, this is my request. I would like to know how many AIG teachers we have in each of our schools. I would like to know how many students from each school are AIG labeled. And I would like to know how many level 5 reading and math students we have that are not AIG labeled.
I
So-
have everything but the level 5s. I will get you copies of the
So,
teachers.
so whenever it's ready, if you can just email it.
I have it right
to the-
now.
To the board.
Me- You want copies or emails?
Email would be great.
Okay. I have it
Email,
in-
thank you so much. And I think you've answered our question on how to help parents when they call and email us and their child is not in AIG. We know who to direct them to.
Yes, ma'am.
And we will help them navigate that path for their child.
Do I need to make my comments in the form of a motion, or do we just kind
I
of
think this was
understand ourselves?
informational.
Well, we changed it to informational on possible action. At
Okay.
least that was my recollection of my
Okay.
motion, but
And my
is that necessary?
very last question, then I'm gonna turn it over to you, Gary. My very last question is I haven't had a chance to read this matrix while I'm sitting here, but the one thing that stands out to me is criteria, 3 or 4. Apparently there's 4 criteria. I would like to see, I need a copy of what the criteria is. I would like this matrix sent to us in email, and I would like the criteria sent to us in email so that we can help those parents when they reach out to board members. We have it, and then we know who to direct them to after we reply to their email.
With that being said, I will offer a motion to recommendation to be addressed by the full board at our next meeting, that the curriculum committee asks or directs Dr. Houlihan to direct staff to examine alternatives on the elementary school level to comply with House Bill 986.
Not elementary?
No, and on elementary.
You said, so do you want to amend your motion for elementary and middle?
Well, I think we've got the middle covered. I just don't like the elementary. Is that so?
I think you said middle, though.
Oh,
Your
did-
motion said
okay.
middle.
My motion means to examine other alternatives to address House Bill 986 on the elementary school level and report back as soon as possible with a targeting implementation in this school year.
Okay, so I have a motion. I need a second. Okay, I second that motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed. Okay, so motion passes 2-1. And I want to thank each of you for walking us through this conversation. Okay, that brings us to sole source purchases.
You must just stay, yeah.
Feel like I drank from a fire hose.
All right, we have a lot of also that were been here for sole source, just to answer any questions if you have them. The first item for sole source is the public consulting group. Let's, if I can, I know that Dr. Nolan, this is a renewal. I believe that Dr. Nolan stepped out on the phone. Can I come back to that one?
Sure.
Because she wants to add a few additional information there. Let's go, and she's also Elizabeth Hudson as well. So can I go down to Lexica Learning?
Absolutely.
All right. And Lexia Learning is a tier 2 reading program. And this This is at Benton Heights Elementary and I believe Rockrest Elementary. They use that. They purchase that with their money. And so this is just, they're the only ones that have that's the program that they want to use at their school. And so we never had a sole source letter up until this point. So we want to make sure that that follows the same guidelines as everybody else and we get the sole source.
So it's just for Benton Heights and Rock Rest Elementary?
I believe that they are the only two schools that.
For some reason, I
Is it
thought
Rocky
we had
River?
discussed
Rocky River, I'm sorry.
Rocky River.
Yes.
I made the same mistake.
Marshville's the
Rocky
third?
River.
Oh, there is Marshville.
So Marshville.
I didn't
How
have
about
that.
Wingate Elementary? East, not Wingate.
So a total of how
East.
many? 5 schools.
1, 2.
Okay,
Okay, I'm
sorry,
up to
my
4.
data was wrong.
So I have Benton Heights, Rocky River, Marshville, East.
Small or big, and that was our 5th. Okay.
Okay.
And it's a reading program that they have, at least 2 schools have used. Rocky River, that's what I've had. Rocky River and Benton Heights have used it before. So now we've got a total of 5 that want to come on board with it.
Union Elementary did not want to use this or doesn't use this? Union Elementary?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
That we're
I will
aware of.
scratch that. Okay. I say, well, let's go through them.
Okay.
And then if someone wants to pull them out for a separate vote, otherwise I say we do a cumulative vote.
Defined learning is is for our STEM schools. Oh, okay. Sorry. That we pulled that one out. That's right.
Okay, so
Sorry.
we're taking defined learning off. Okay.
Premier is a agenda that Sun Valley Middle School would like to purchase as part of their Leader in Me initiative at the school. The reason this is a sole source, while there are a lot of agenda companies out there, my understanding is that Premier is the only one that uses Stephen Covey's 7 Habits. And so they have that sole source to that. And so they are, since they're the only ones that have that, Sun Valley Middle School would like to use them for their agenda. And a note on that is that Star Orthodontics has offset that cost by 50%. I don't have the total pricing of that agenda for the entire school to tell you how much 50% would be. But I have asked Ms. Morris also to put that on donation, the whole donations list, because I believe it will probably be over $1,000. If they're doing school-wide, I can't imagine that being under $1,000 based on my knowledge of what agendas cost.
Do schools have to pay for our existing agendas?
They do. Individual schools pay for whatever agenda
Mhm.
that they're using, yes, if they choose that. Some schools don't give out agendas, but some choose to reserve money and spend it
Either
there.
way, Sun Valley Middle would be paying for an agenda.
Yes, ma'am.
But no one knows what that amount is.
I am still working on that
Okay.
to get that total amount. I can give you an estimated cost based on previous knowledge that I have as a high school principal. And for 4 grade levels, we ran it somewhere in the $5,000 range to do that. And those are those big, thick agendas that are bound. And so I would imagine for 3 grade levels, it's a little bit, Sun Valley Middle School is a little bit smaller than it will at Monroe and Weddington
So I guess
was
the
there.
question is, what's the price difference in going to the Stephen Covey?
Versus the non,
Uh-huh.
it may not be
And do
that, it may be insignificant as far as a price difference. It's just the only, I guess, company that has the rights for the Stephen Covey 7 Habits. And since they're doing the Leader in Me, that's a building block for the students throughout the day and that. So I think
Now,
that's
they're
why.
not officially doing Leader in Me. They're not, are they a
I think they're working towards
Towards
that. And so
that,
they are
okay.
beginning to build that foundation with their students
Mhm.
on, I think Sun Valley Cluster in itself likes the whole idea of leadership as
And
their,
they have Indian Trail as the foundation.
and here
So-
those students come into
And now
middle
Sun
school.
Valley Elementary, so.
Right. So I see that even carrying through
Mhm.
into the high school with a lot of,
Absolutely.
what they do with ROTC and other things to building leadership as their, as really their niche that they would like.
Assuming that we'll be sending this to the full board
Yes, ma'am.
next week, I would just ask, to pull those numbers
I will.
and find out what, I think, first off, I want to thank Star Orthodontics for partnering with Sun Valley Middle School and paying for half of those agendas. I'm sure with the Stephen Covey thing, I'm sure they're not cheap. So I am very thankful to have a community partner like Star Orthodontics. So just before our board meeting next Thursday, let's find out what the 50% cost is going to be to Sun Valley for them to fund. But this sounds great.
Okay. And then IXL is on the list. And here to talk about IXL is Dr. Healy, if you can explain IXL.
So that is a program that we use in all of our middle schools in their math classes. It's a component of our core instruction because we don't have physical textbooks. And it's used to be able to differentiate with the different levels within that regular classroom so that students can have practice work that's appropriate for their level. It also adjusts for them. So as they get better at their skills, it raises them to the next level.
Mhm. Do we use IXL in elementary or high school?
We do have some that use it individually. Just a school has
Okay.
purchased that. The middle school principals agreed that that would be the tool that would be most useful for them. So last year, this year, and next year, we have a 3-year contract. So that's the tool that they
In
thought
the
would be
high
most
schools?
in the middle
Oh,
schools.
middle school.
So then some high schools and some elementaries have purchased it
Okay.
on their own,
Gotcha.
but we're
Okay.
district-wide for middle.
Okay. Thank you.
Another renewal that we have is Educator's Handbook. We've implemented that for a year, and I've asked Mr. McGraw to come up and speak on Educator's Handbook and the uses of that, just as an informational as to why we're coming back with that group.
Thank you, Dr. Breedlove. Good morning.
Good morning.
Educator Handbook was used by all schools in the 2017-2018 school year. Is a discipline data entry system. It gives us a standardized way of reporting discipline internally. It does upload the data to Power School. The data managers do that. So we are uploading that to the Power School system from the state. The big thing too, it gives district level oversight for monitoring for the discipline referrals too. It gives ability for the immediate dashboard reports that we can get to look at every school, look at system-wide the discipline data. So last year was the first year we'd used it across the system though.
Mhm.
So it seems to be, I do like it.
All schools.
All schools
all
used it
schools.
in the 2017-2018 school year.
And were they all actively using it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So I have a question about this because you hear things in the community. When a teacher enters a
Discipline.
discipline report, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
When they enter what they observed, witnessed, and experienced,
Right.
can that be altered or changed by someone else other than the teacher who witnessed it, experienced it, and wrote it up?
The administrator can then give feedback and then the teacher can see the feedback that was given. So her initial report would not be changed, but then the administrator in their findings in the investigation, then they could put additional comments in there. So it provides a chain, kind of a chain of custody. The report comes in from the teacher, the administrator looks into
But no
it.
one can change the teacher's report because there was some concern that teachers' reports had been changed.
What I'm seeing is the initial, Michelle?
No, go ahead, Jared.
The initial report is not going to
Cannot
be
be
changed.
altered.
The administrator is just adding to the report after
Okay.
he or she investigates,
Mhm.
and then that feedback goes back to the teacher. We can
So
monitor
it's a
that.
building block, but changes can't be made.
That is correct. I mean,
Okay.
it could change because of the investigation. You know, the report comes in from a teacher, the administrator investigates, finds something different, then that feedback goes to the teacher. We can see that at the district
But
level.
the teacher's initial report cannot be altered.
The facts submitted by the teacher, the explanation of the event is not what changes. What can change, I'm sorry. I apologize. I should know better, Arthur. It's not the actual substance of what the report is that changes. What does change at times is the rule that it falls under, because teachers select a rule when they put their report in. They don't know necessarily the code of conduct and what the rules are. They just pick what it looks like. And then sometimes when the investigation occurs and is completed, the administrator will go back and change the rule that it falls under. And that was the concern we were getting, is that they were changing that rule. But that's what the administrator is supposed to do, is make a determination of what rule it falls under.
Okay.
But to submit the report, the teacher has to pick an initial rule to begin with. And that's where the changes come in place.
Okay, thank you.
And Ms. Merrill, we can actually see if referrals are still pending. If a school has multiple pending referrals from teachers, we can monitor that at the district level. So that's a nice piece to have, where we can call the administrator to make sure we are addressing the needs of
Okay.
our teachers.
Okay, very good, thank you.
All
And that
right,
brings us to Naviance.
And Naviance, and Ms. Garner is here to talk about Naviance. She is the Naviance expert, and has done that for the last year. And so she has some really exciting stuff happening with Naviance this year that's going to spring us forward and do a better job of reaching out to our community in that. So she's here to talk a little bit about Naviance.
I want to say that I shared that with Robert Filter. He and I are co-conspirators in the implementation of Naviance. So one of the things that we've done this year with Naviance is we have expanded our scope and sequence. Last year, we required each grade level to really complete one activity to kind of get their feet wet with Naviance. I explained it to Dr. Breedlove that, you know, Naviance is kind of like an onion, and there are lots of different layers that you can peel back. And we were really on the surface last year. With year one, everybody kind of trying to wrap their head around it. So I'm very excited about it this year. We are going to implement some surveys at grades 6 and 9 to see how students are feeling as they transition into middle and high school. I've been reading through comments today. All of our counselors have had an opportunity to comment on the drafts of those surveys and provide their input. And so those will be finalized tomorrow and ready for schools to deploy next week. We've had teacher training at several different middle schools. I'm working with some counselors next week so that they can present some teacher training. Very excited about that. Encouraging them to continue to provide information to parents. One of the other pieces that we've been working on with technology is we had some issues last year with trying to get Naviance to be directly connected to the PowerSchool parent portal, so that when parents are in there, they click the little arrow in the top right and there's a button to go into their Naviance account. We couldn't make it work last year, so parents had to create a separate account, but we are pretty sure this year, we're kind of waiting for the PowerSchool parent portal to turn on to test that. But because it was an issue with the student ID number, and it went back to Clever. And anyway, we've solved that. And so we're hoping that this year parents will be able to more easily access Naviance directly through PowerSchool parent portal. We're keeping our fingers crossed. I think September 11th is the date that gets turned on. So we'll know at that point.
Okay.
We are also throwing around some ideas. We are going to continue our Huntington Blitzes this year. And so talking about the idea of adding some parent pieces to that with college readiness. You know, how do we engage our parents a little bit more? Do we do a fall and a spring parent university, either at the same time, at a different time from the Naviance, from the Blitzes? We have schools that are asking about how they can push students to other school-based activities through Naviance. There was a ton of training done over the summer with counselors, with administrators. We had teachers. I really think this is going to take off this year. And our seniors are going to be using Naviance to connect to the Common Application so that they will request transcripts and letters of recommendation from their teachers directly through Naviance. So it will really ramp up for our seniors because they're going to have to be in there all the time. I have also been working with Dr. Bowers, and we've agreed that the way that schools report their scholarships this year, in the past, they've submitted that through a Google form. And this year, we're going to use Naviance as the official word on the number of scholarship dollars that schools are receiving. So that'll be a little bit more clean this year. And schools won't have to self-report. We will pull that from Naviance based on the numbers that are in there. So I do believe that we have a ramped up implementation this year. We have a plan in place, and I feel really good about it.
So the senior thing, it sounds wonderful. But my concern is for seniors, because I know we had an initiative last year to get middle school students or 8th grade students into beginning this process that our juniors and seniors today never had. So how far behind the ball are seniors going to be because they didn't have this in 8th, 9th, 10th grade, and now we're forcing them to use this for their college applications or Common Core and their letters of recommendation?
No, so I think our juniors did use Naviance last year. They had to do different activities through Naviance. It was probably one activity. So they are familiar with the platform. Students would have to, this is a learning curve for seniors, regardless of whether they use Naviance or whether they just go straight to Common Application. So for the student, they won't know the difference because it's either way, it's a brand new experience for them. So they have to be trained as juniors on what to do their senior year regardless. And a lot of our schools conducted that training in the late spring last year. And a lot of them have those meetings planned for this fall. So while there will be a learning curve, that's going to be a learning curve that our seniors have every single year because it's brand new to them. This will be the
because
first time.
of the Common Core app.
The Common Application.
And some schools use it and some schools don't.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And so the piece that will be different this year than was different last year is students requesting their transcripts through Naviance or requesting letters of recommendation. But that's new for seniors every year when they're senior. They've not had to request a transcript or a letter of recommendation. So the training process for the kids is different, but the kids don't know it because they go through that when they become a senior.
So instead of, having a face-to-face relationship with your teacher and asking your teacher personally for a letter of recommendation, that's off the table. Now we're saying you have to go to a computer, sit down, log in, and ask the teacher for a recommendation.
So what ends up happening, there is a feature, there's a couple different ways kids can do it. We do recommend during the training that the kids go to the teacher first and ask. In fact, some of the schools have put a stipulation that you have to ask. We're not going to, that you can't request a recommendation unless you've already had a face-to-face. And so that's part of the training that they do with the kids. What putting it online does is it makes it a cleaner, easier process for the teacher. So that's right. So rather than the teacher having to write the recommendation, put the stamp on it, get it in the mail, or scan the letter, upload the letter separately to all the different schools, the teacher has one dashboard that they go to. They can see all of the letters of recommendation in one place. They fill out a form that they have to fill out through the Common Application anyway. They fill that form, they upload that, and they upload their letter of recommendation. They don't actually have to scan one with their signature in it anymore if they don't want to, because it comes securely through electronically, whereas before they may have felt the need to scan it because it was going to be emailed or sent some other way. But because we're using the eDocs portion of Naviance to submit those letters of recommendation, it streamlines it really for a teacher's perspective. It will really simplify this process.
Okay.
And the kids, so the kids are going to be trained as seniors either way. The additional step for them is that instead of going to the guidance office and saying, I need a transcript for this, and some schools have traditionally done it through their website or however they just
CFNC.org.
Right. And they can still request through CFNC. So kind of what we're telling the kids is if you're applying in state, still go through CFNC. If you're applying out of state, somewhere that CFNC doesn't, you can request it through Naviance.
Nice. Okay. When do you think, you mentioned the ACT, SAT blitzes that were so successful last year. When do you think you'll have dates for this year?
We have them.
Is Huntington still partnering with us to do that?
They are. In fact, we are going to be They are sponsoring we had a competition last year, a friendly competition among our high schools to increase participation rates in several different college readiness activities. We'll be sharing those awards at our principals meeting next week. And Huntington is sponsoring that with a donation to the schools for a college readiness center, some money to go toward that. They are partnering with us next year. We're looking at shifting our registration, moving to Eventbrite instead, the free version of that, so that it will send automatic reminders and so that we can easily cap that once we hit the maximum number of students, which we didn't usually run into last year. But we do have our dates. We're still working on locations just because we have some construction going on around the district. So we're trying to find somewhere that's an easy site to go to and avoid some of the construction.
Okay.
So we do have our dates. We're looking at, and I don't have them right here. We have one November 17th, and then so we're gonna only do 3 dates this year. We felt that having 5 dates last year was a little bit much, and we feel like the participation could have been a little bit better. So we're going to do one in November for the combined tests. We're going to do a spring one for SAT, and I believe we're doing it and one in February for ACT. So I believe it's the February, it is the Saturday before we do the ACT. And then we have one that is going to be the Saturday before we do the SAT in the spring. So we've just kind of streamlined that so that there's one combined, one SAT, one ACT.
So our juniors will take the ACT in February.
Correct.
And the SAT in the spring.
In April. That is correct.
Okay.
So let's see, the February date, well, the November date is the 17th. The February date is the 16th of February, and the ACT is administered on February 20th. The April date is April 6th is when we're doing the Blitz, and then we're doing the SAT school day administration on April 9th. And
Very good. Very good. Yep. Huge success in my opinion last year. So thank you for coordinating that.
All right, the last 2 items, Public Consulting Group and Elizabeth Hudson. I have Dr. Nolan here, and these are both 2 items used by our EC department.
The PCG is the group of people that we have been using for EasyIEP. They are also the vendor for the ECATS rollout that will hopefully be coming in the winter of this year. Also of interest would be the fact that DPI has already sent us a check for $65,000 to reimburse the district for the amount that we would pay PCG to use their product for EasyIEP.
Okay.
And then Elizabeth,
Okay. And we've already received that?
yes.
Okay, nice. Okay. Any questions? Good. Okay.
And then Elizabeth Hudson is a consultant that we use with our pre-K. She was a long time, many years ago, the person who oversaw pre-K coordinator. And so she worked with Donna Brown and with our assessment center, providing some invaluable services.
Okay. Do we hire her every year or is this the
Yes.
first year?
No, this is an ongoing contract we've had.
Ongoing. And the contract is just for 1 year or?
It's yearly,
Okay.
and then we re-up it every year.
Okay. Have the prices gone up or have they stayed the same?
They've stayed the same.
Okay. Okay, any questions, board members?
I'll make a motion to approve the sole source purchases as requested A through G.
And recommend it to the full board?
Yes, recommend to the full board.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, passes 3-0.
Thank you.
And welcome.
Well, thank you.
Okay, that brings us to Empower Me program.
Here to discuss the Empower Me program is Dr. Crawford. This is a program for elementary level students, and it is really sponsored by Point. Dr. Crawford has done some research on
program like this?
So as you know, one of our strategic initiatives is on social and emotional learning. And so this Empower Me program will be part of the strategy for supporting social emotional learning. So I met with Jesse Lindbergh probably back in May of last year from Turning Point. And we talked about this Empower Me program. The Empower Me program is about abuse prevention and body ownership. So it's for K through 5th grade. And some of the topics that they cover is stranger danger. Another topic is about no secrets, teaching kids that if someone, comes to you and says, hey, can you keep a secret?
Mhm.
And you just don't really feel good about it, you need to tell an adult. It also covers good touches, bad touches. And then it also talks about if you see that someone is being hurt, you need to tell someone about it. And so they talk about the difference between telling and tattling. So Turning Point has trainers. They have staff who have been trained to deliver this instruction. And so they would be providing the sessions. So if it was implemented in a school, the principal would have the choice to say, I want this, for my 2nd and 3rd grade, or they could say, I want it K-5. It's a total of 5 sessions per grade level. And those 5 sessions cover those topics that I just shared with you. So it would be a total of 5 30-minute sessions per grade level. And the trained staff would come in and do that. So it's extended to all 30 of our elementary schools. I'm very excited about it because I think that it definitely supports our social and emotional learning initiative. And so, they're ready to reach out to the schools and talk with the principals and say, hey, are you interested in this? And if so, what grade levels and can we come out? And I know last year we had a couple schools that were already interested. So I'm very excited about this and think that it's going to be very helpful.
Did you say, is there a cost?
No cost. No cost.
Wow. And they can do this at all 30 elementary schools.
They can. It's just a matter.
5 sessions.
5 sessions. Mm-hmm. I don't know if all schools would decide to do all grade levels, but they certainly, would throughout the course of the year would schedule that.
Now this says K-6.
It is. I don't know what the 6th grade. I would think it looks the same, but that's something that we could extend to 6th grade as well.
Madam Chairman, I offer a motion that we approve the Empower Me program.
To recommend it to the
To
full
recommend to the full board.
board. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank
Very
you.
interesting. Okay, now we will go. Yeah, let's take a 2-minute break. Roger.
Okay, thank you for that break. We are now back to the curriculum meeting. We will pick up with street safe driving program.
All right. Street Safe was brought to our attention by Mr. Sides, and we looked at it from the outside and kind of got the overview and realized this may be something that we want to look at as a team, want to look at as a district because of the features that it has for our students, and especially in the area of driver safety. And here to talk to us about this, and Ms. Trawick, who is our driver's ed coordinator in the district, she did the research on it and is here to present that research to us about the program and what she found.
Before you, if I got everybody, there is a summary of my notes, so they're pretty informal. But Street Safe is out of Wilmington, and it offers what's called life-saving driving experience. It also offers a traffic court piece of it, but that's not what we're talking about today. It is a 4.5 hands-on opportunity for parents and students to sign up their students to be able to participate in this experience. It is half in the classroom, half live outside activities. They will have to have successfully completed driver's ed. They don't have to have a driver's license yet, but or even a permit yet, but they have to be able to prove that they successfully completed driver's ed. And then if they do have, if they're 18 or if they're 25, it doesn't matter. They will be accepted as well. Maximum of attendees would be 60 and minimum would be 20 for a course to be able to happen. It is a see it, hear it, do it experience. The instructors are certified instructors, and they are first responders, so law enforcement, firefighters, people like that. They do go through monthly training on vehicle recovery simulations. Sorry, couldn't think of the word. When they get behind the wheel for the first time, the attendees, they are meant to fail in this experience, and not terminally or fatally fail. Let's just be clear. I did put in there, no participant has ever been hurt. Okay. They experience they're driving like they normally would, and then suddenly the instructor will scream at them and shock them and distract them and increase the speed, or things like that. So they're meant to fail, and it's to prove a point that, one, it could happen very quickly, and how can we reduce the distractions and other strategies to become a better, safer driver. This is not like the brakes, where it is a more like you fall off the shoulder or type of activity. This is more of, let's be preventative and better up front than post.
Is this really behind the wheel, or is it virtual, or is it simulation? Because I thought I heard you say simulation.
In the manner of the instructors go through recovery simulation training.
Okay.
Right.
But this is
Mhm.
car in a parking lot.
It is. It is.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's a parking lot?
Well, we would choose a school, and then they would Google Earth it to see if it meets their space and requirements. And it would usually be at a high school parking lot. Usually would be the biggest available space for them.
Explain the fail, what that looks like.
Oh.
in the code of mannequin.
Right. Yes. So if the track or route is lined with cones and then mannequins, and so if somebody's yelling at you and how you react, you may hit the cone, you may hit the mannequin, that sort of thing. It's not a live person. It's not anything like that. It's just to simulate it. Yes. There are always 2 attendees in the vehicle, and they may not be of the same family, and then an instructor. And they never have just one student, which we also, as driver's ed, we don't ever just have one student either. Their insurance policy is huge. Did ask about that, their liability, and waivers must be signed by parents and students. All materials are relevant, up to date, and some are pretty raw because they do have speakers come in who are victims or of accidents. So very real conversations.
Is it their vehicle?
It is.
Okay.
They also have a seatbelt condenser simulation, which you're going about 8 to 10 miles per hour of an impact of what it would be like to not have a seatbelt on is part of it as well. This is not a better driving, how to become a better driver. This is how to not become a bad driver in essence. So, you know, reduce your distractions sort of thing. The high school sessions can be offered, and we would choose a location. And again, they would check on Google Earth to see if it has enough space and the requirements, that sort of thing. They didn't share with me what the actual requirements are, but they would know. They would even send a person, if they're sort of hesitant about it, they would send a person to come look at the space. The first hour, parents are required to be there, but after that, they're just encouraged to stay, but they can stay the whole time. And then the other 3.5 hours is with the students. There is an hour meeting with parents separately than students of the classroom portion. And if there is room and space, the parents can be in the vehicle with their child as well. Once the space is confirmed and secured, then they would need to have a contact person who works at that facility, just to be able to, they would know the facility better than anybody else. So they would prefer that. They do ask that the facility fee be waived or paid for by the district. And once, of course, they provide their street smart insurance. And then if school personnel, which we would want to have present to supervise, then the district would be responsible for that compensation. They do not charge the district to come here. It costs them about $5,500 to put on a session, but they don't charge us that at all. They do charge a $20 to $30 fee per attendee, so student, and it's for really to reduce the no-shows, because on a Saturday morning, you know, if it's suddenly sunny, there's a little more tooth in the game if they have paid $20 to $30, and they would take our input on what that fee would be, but it's an average between 20 and 30.
Okay.
And then they once we secure it, they send us all the scripts, all the flyers, all the advertising, and all the registration is done online. If we do have students who want to participate or families that want to participate, yet the fee is too high, they will scholarship those students and add them to the class. You think of,
I mentioned that the fee is paid directly to them.
yes, the fee is paid directly to Street Smart online registration.
I just wanted to add, Ms. Tregwick alluded to the traffic court piece, or the younger adult, the non-student driver piece. That is the vehicle for which they really fund their program on an ongoing basis and keep the costs low, because what they do is they show the law enforcement community the value of the program. And so your younger offenders, you know, your drivers 20, 25, not our kids, through the district attorney's office, if they so find value in the program, refer them to this as well. And that kind of gets them off the hook for their ticket or what have you. And so they use that vehicle to really subsidize the student piece of it. And that's how the cost is reduced. So that's kind of their model. So it's not just high school kids they work with. They work with a lot of younger drivers at different age groups, and they directly involve the law enforcement community.
How many other school districts are they doing this? What other school districts are they doing this program for?
I know Pitt County, Wilmington, whatever county that is, sorry. I think it's 7 districts right now that they do it for, but we would be the ones in this area, like CMS, it doesn't.
Because Pitt County is about 5 hours away.
Right. So that's why they really would like a commitment of minimum of 20 attendees as well. Otherwise, it wouldn't be cost.
Yeah.
They're at 16 different locations. I just pulled it up, but I think maybe in 7 counties. And I actually reached out to Pitt County because I have a connection there and asked them about it. And they said they don't interface with it. They just allow them to use their facility. That it's not sanctioned by Pitt County Schools. It's not run by, they just say, you can come and use our facility and we'll be happy to advertise to our kids.
And then also it's not just for the people in the community of where the facility was chosen to be. So if we chose it to be Porter Ridge at Porter Ridge High and that worked out space wise and that sort of thing, it's not just for the Porter Ridge community. It can actually be from South Carolina, a person from South Carolina, because it will be advertised through their site as well. And they will have the same access opportunity to
How
join.
backlogged are they, and like how soon would they even be able to come to Union County? Like, do they have a long wait list?
I didn't ask that question.
Because I know, like the Breaks program, they're always on a wait list. It's
Right.
very hard to get in.
Right.
So I'm just curious if they have a backlog, like
I didn't
everyone's
get-
trying to get it.
I didn't ask that question, but I
Okay.
didn't get that impression.
Okay.
That was pretty upfront with Breaks, and that was not even mentioned
Okay.
with them at all.
How long have they been doing this?
I don't remember. Sorry. I don't think I put it on there. I can look it
Okay.
up online though, real
Okay.
quick. I want to say it's 10 years minimum.
Okay.
2006.
Thank you.
So are you coming before the committee to propose holding an event? Is that your, the request piece of this? How would you like to proceed?
I think what we would like to do is see what interest there are out there for this program. But if we move forward with the program and getting the information out, is there anything in this program that you would see wouldn't be beneficial for our students or our county, and trying to bring that to one of our schools out there? I guess that's we did the background check. We like the program. We think there is some benefit there for our students that if they chose to be a part of that. And it would be just a general goodwill thing for our county. And so that's kind of where we are with that. We would like to move forward with the program and look at, we can certainly bring back dates and times, and we would like to ask permission to be at Porter Ridge High School or be at, it's probably going to take a larger school with a big parking lot, I would imagine. So that's correct.
You might even want to talk to SPCC with their big parking lot.
Right. Absolutely. And that would be a
Flat
great,
and open. Yeah.
You're right.
No
They're probably
curbs.
the largest around
Yeah.
for sure. And so being able to introduce that. So we could definitely work on a date and time and a location and kind of bring that back and say, this is what we'd like to do.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we recommend to the full board.
I was just going to comment
Go ahead.
about the wait list. Just looking at their site, they put all of the registrations on their site. They're 16 to 18 and only 2 are already full. One of those is Guilford County. One of those is Wake County. So looks like the larger counties fill up more quickly. So we may have, depending on demand, but they will offer this. If you partner with them, it wouldn't be a once a year event. They would do it multiple times if we entered into a partnership with them.
Does the partnership mean they would want to do a contract?
That is a great question. Probably, yeah.
In the event that something happens, I'm not saying that anything would happen. Would our insurance be charged? How is-
Their insurance. Yes.
And the parents and the students had to sign the waiver too.
Because we wouldn't be saying that it is
Our
our program. It's their program that we're bringing as a convenience to them.
I guess we could look at moving forward and getting that additional information of what does a contract look like? What does that mean on the side of Union County Public Schools? And if we are going to use our facilities, we would probably at that point request that as part of that partnership, we would allow them to use our facilities. They still have their waivers, they still have their insurance, but as a I guess, good shepherd to the program for Union County Public Schools, just to offer that facility to allow them to, excuse me, to use it. And if it's SPCC, of course, that would be on them to say that they would allow their facility to be used.
I'd like to offer a motion, Madam Chairman, that we recommend to the full board moving forward with at least an initial street safe event hosted by UCPS.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. None opposed. Okay, so thank you. And so I guess the next time we talk, or if you are able to get like an example copy of a contract by next Thursday or something, you just let us know. Okay. Yeah, prospective dates. Because the other board members may have questions, and that would be helpful. Thank you. Okay, that brings us to Miller's Crew.
Okay, here to talk to us about Miller's Crew and this opportunity for Union County Public Schools, both Dr. Nolan and Miss Linda Little from our EC department, that they both have researched it and have found some information for us to look at.
So thank you for allowing us to talk with you about this opportunity about Miller's Crew. We first became aware of it through Mr. Sides. He contacted me, and Mrs. Little had already been contacted as well. So we talked with the Molners, who are in Cumberland County. This is a program that they set up, and it's named after their son, Miller, who has some special needs and is a student. As he was coming to high school, they found that there really were not any vocational opportunities, or not very many vocational opportunities for him, along with other students. And that correlates to our transition to adulthood classrooms. We are looking at this as not only an opportunity for our transition to adulthood classrooms, or TTA, but our occupational course of study students as well, because both these groups are already placed out in the community, working in various areas of vocational exploration and with jobs. And so that piece is already in place. That would not be something we would have to start up. But what Miller's Crew does is they come in and they do a classroom crash, given a classroom space, and based on the needs of the students, they set up a vocational station. So the first class they did was bicycle assembly. And within that comes an 8x5 Miller's Crew task table, which has room for 10 students to be seated around the table, performing the various vocational tasks. Another one that they've done is a garden station, because that was what that school wanted. They've also done grocery stations as well. And so students learn how to stock shelves. Within the community, they receive some boxes and, are able to work from there. Within each of the classrooms also comes the built-in coffee shop, which is what they're really noted for. They provide the baseline supplies for the beginning, the tables to provide to provide students to serve to, so that students have opportunity for that social interaction, learning those social skills, learning serving skills, working with the community or with other folks out that they may not know as closely as their classmates. And this can also be geared to partnerships with the community, which Ms. Little is going to talk about in just a second, because she's had some great ideas about how to leverage this. We have already surveyed our TTA teachers and our OCS teachers to see what they would like to do, to have some ideas, because the success of this is dependent upon the enthusiasm of the teachers, because they will come in and do the initial, but then we need to sustain this. And so that's sustainability. So Mrs. Little is going to talk with you about some of the specifics.
So one of the things that we did was we definitely talked with our teachers. I'm sorry. Can you hear me now? Okay. One of the things that we did was made sure that we spoke with our teachers because we really wanted to make sure that that level of excitement and enthusiasm was there. And it definitely was. What we presented to them were two options. And one of the options was to have a district-wide community cafe in which students at all of the high schools that are in our TTA programs and our OCS programs would have the opportunity to participate in some way with the cafe. And then the other thing was also, the other option would be we would actually do what they do as far as like crashing a classroom. So in talking with the teachers, they agreed that number one, everybody except for one school said district-wide in the community, which I was like, yes. And there was one school that said, well, it would be nice to have something in the classroom. So in considering everything from our teachers and looking overall, last year I had spoken with a nonprofit that's here that actually has space that would be great for a cafe. And we had already talked about the possibility of us doing something collaboratively with our OCS students. So of course, when this came up, I was like, this would be ideal. And Dr. Nolan agreed, oh, that would be great. So I met with them, and that is what we have the pictures of. It's Signpost Ministries. And they're a nonprofit that has have a facility here on Henderson Street in Monroe. And as you can see, it has listed what their mission is, and it definitely is in line with what we're looking for doing with our students and our families. And I like Signpost Ministries because they're a part of the community, and they like to have individuals with disabilities and their families at the facility and providing different things for them that normally wouldn't happen. So some of the things that they've done in their facility is they've done like sensory-free haircuts. All these are important, for our parents of our students with disabilities. So they already have a space that would be great for the cafe. And we talked about us utilizing that space district-wide and pulling our students through that. So this is the space that they already have. And I love it because it's got the little cafe-like style window things. It's already got the tables and everything. And there's a kitchen that is already there. And there's also a large space for shelving that could help with setting up stations. So here's our goal. If we were to do this with Miller's Crew, they provide $5,000 like for the cost to get everything started. And that equipment would be Union County Public School equipment that would be placed in that building for those stations. Our students from our TTA program and our OCS program, they are already going out in the community. So transportation is not going to be a problem. We already have transportation. It would be a matter of drafting out the logistics of how we would schedule that for our students to go to the site. Normally with their cafe, they do specialty drinks, coffee, and snacks. And the reason that I said it could touch so many of our students is that we want to look at the whole package deal, the marketing aspect, everything that students can be involved in for that business. Already in speaking with Mr. and Mrs. Molnar, and Mr. Breedlove, they had already applied for a grant with Wells Fargo. And so we provided them with data from our district. And I spoke with him earlier this week, and he said it's looking very good that we may get that $5,000 grant. Now, there is what we need to look at is the sustainability of the program. So here's some things that we have talked about. Number one, with the cafe, I think that it's going to be okay, that it will help. But if that costs, if there could be some monies that could be added with that 5,000 to help us to continue to sustain it. Number two, because one of our schools said, well, we would love to have a station. So even in being proactive in looking at having stations in some of the classrooms, we have researched and found that we can apply for a grant with vocational rehabilitation that could help us to put some of the stations in the school. Now, the idea that we're going to do for that grant is to encompass the whole thing so that we have stations in the classrooms that are preparing students in the classroom to start learning those vocational skills, learning those communication skills, and then move from the classroom to the actual site so that they're now in a true vocational training environment.
Don't forget the sandwiches.
Yes, and we would like to move it to the level of actually having a time slot that we're open and we can take orders for sandwiches. That's our goal. Now, at this site also, there is a refrigerator, there's a microwave, but they don't have a stove. I don't think that's going to be a problem. I think we'll try to get, we'll be able to get that sponsored. Our goal is just to provide our students with as many opportunities as possible for vocational training. And I think that we both feel that, you know, the collaboration with the community is what really is going to make the difference.
They have crashed classrooms there in Cumberland County where they're located. They have done one outside, which was Bladen County, which is a very small, rural, underprivileged area. And so we would be the third place or the second outside place that they're willing to come.
And they were very excited when
Yes.
I called them back and said, hey, I just need to find out. We need to find out, are you going to support it if it's within the community? And Ms. Molnar was so excited. She was like, we just came from visiting in another state, a facility that was in the community. So that is what their goal is, that they would be doing that anyway.
You said something about needing some funding to sustain the program or add to it. How much you looking for?
Well, normally what they said is that like that 5,000 is that initial equipment, and it would be nice to have 5,000 to match that. And then moving forward, like I said, there are a lot of different things that we can look at doing. Even with my conversation with Signpost Ministries was, you know, we could utilize it for a lot of different things that we could be collaboratively come up with some grant monies for, because of the collaboration within the community.
So Miller's crew, they would come in and do the training, or like how?
They come in and renovate it, and it's named after
Their
HTV.
son.
Well, but HTV,
Oh, okay.
HGTV is
Oh,
where they
yeah,
get the
yeah.
crashes part.
Okay.
So they come in and they completely renovate that space, and then they provide whatever training you would need, like for the coffee shop or for that. But then your teachers would be responsible for the ongoing piece.
So the equipment that they put in is commercial equipment,
Okay.
so that it is like a true cafe environment.
And would that be put in at Signpost Ministries? Okay.
Yes.
Not at the school. Okay.
Right. Right.
Now, what about the funding you mentioned about having stations at the schools as well? So what kind of funding is that?
That
How does
funding
that
is
work?
through the North Carolina Vocational Rehabilitation, and it is what they call pre-employment transition training. And that's a new federal that it's open, and they've got money that has been allotted for that. And I've already spoken, of course, with VR to ensure that and propose, this is what we're looking at. Does that fall in that category for that grant? And their answer was yes. And they're excited.
So I see I'm not going to have to tell you how fast you're going to get this done, because it sounds like you're already getting it done. I like you. Will you come up for a raise? What's our timeline on this?
Well, what we need to do at this point is get back in contact with Miller's crew, and then they will give us a timeline as to, well, first of all, they have to contact back with Wells Fargo to ensure that yes, that is a yes, because what he told me was it looks very good, and they have a relationship with Wells Fargo, so they have funded these projects in the past. So we would have to get back with them, and then she definitely wanted to see the space, so I will send that to her, and then they can help me out with the timelines and how soon we can get things going.
Are you going to ask us for the additional 5 right now? Or are you going to look for that in next year's budget? What's the, besides the initial 5 for the setup, do you need the additional 5 you talked about right now? What's your timeline on that?
Well, here's the way I would look at it is that number one, that grant, I'm not sure as to when it would come through. So I would ask for the 5,000 now, and that way we've got that to at least get it started.
Well, hold it. Oh, the 5 to get it started.
Yes.
For the school.
That right.
For that
Oh, the school.
Right.
Okay.
So will we need to hire additional teacher?
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am.
The teachers
No,
are already
no
there.
additional staff, unless you want to give us some extra money. But anyway, no additional staff. The way that we have aligned it, because our, like for instance, our OCS program, when those students are going out, they're going out with a teacher assistant already. When our TTA students are going out, we have a community-based vocational training team that also falls under like our career and tech. So they go out with those students. So we already have the supervision. It's just like them going to a job site. However, it would be our own cafe that we're running that they would be going to. Oh, yes. Yes. It would be only during the operating times that our students are available to be there. And normally our students, the earliest that they're leaving school is probably right at about 8:45 or 9:40 that they leave school. So we could rotate them out, and it depends on how long. It depends on the school. Because like with our OCS, based on where that group of students are in the curriculum, they may be able to pair an OCS prep class along with a career class. So those students may be out for 2 blocks, which is awesome to run
So
something
again, I
like
want to
that.
confirm the cafe is not at the school. You're
No.
proposing that it would be at Signpost Ministries.
Yes.
ma'am.
Yes.
But you're also following up to install workstations
Yes.
at the schools.
Yes. Yes. Because the problem, I think the biggest challenge, I won't say problem, that if we did the cafe in a school, it would particularly be mainly for that school. And we've got to have the space for it. So we've got to find where's the space. And then you've got to look at, okay, the access for kitchen and all of that. Could it occur in a classroom? It could. But if we look at how our classrooms are set up, would that be the ideal situation or not? And I think that the value of what our students would get out of it being in the community and the community taking a part in that is unmeasurable. I mean, I just.
One of the other issues that would come into play if we had the cafe in a school setting is the conflict with child nutrition and not being able to sell to other students and competing sales. So this takes that away.
I guess the only concern I would have is what if something happens to Signpost Ministries and all of our equipment and everything from the grant is in their facility?
We get our equipment. That would be our equipment.
So I'm just wondering, would we need a contract with them
Lease.
or some kind of lease or understanding with them? I don't know. Dr.
Right now, whenever I spoke with her, now we did not talk about a lease or a cost at this point. She just said, you know what, I don't mind you utilizing our building.
Okay.
Is that something that that's something I can go back to the table with them and say, hey, look, we're talking long range here. What are your thoughts?
Michelle, you want to join in on this from a legal standpoint?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to talk to Dr. Nolan and Ms. Little, because I've not been involved in this and neither has Deb. So we'll have to get involved and see what we need to do.
Yeah.
Madam Chairman, I will most gladly offer a motion to recommend to the full board approval and implementation of our own Miller's crew here at UCPS.
And can we do that without legal advice first, or are we okay to move
We're not
forward with the
Really ask
proposal?
that we wait and let me get into a little more before you make no decision.
Well, you got till Thursday. We would move in.
Till Thursday.
Well, we won't move in on Thursday.
If we do contingent on board or on legal review and.
Legal review.
I will amend my motion to pending legal review, and I would like to include the $5,000 in seed financing as part of my recommendation to the full board.
Okay, all those in favor? say
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Okay,
Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to the iReady curriculum update.
The iReady curriculum update, we have gone back, even though iReady was approved in the last curriculum committee meeting, we went back with our schools and even with the company, and we felt that the amount of PD that we originally thought that we needed was too much. This is now our third year of using iReady, and did we necessarily need to have can we use it? Possibly. Do we need it? Possibly not. And so we brainstormed and worked with iReady to redo our contract, and we took out some of the professional development. We felt that it was just overlapping what we were currently doing and already done. So we are actually coming back to you to spend less money than what was originally allocated to us to spend on this program. And so we have cut that contract by $12,000 and wanted to update you on that. We will be spending less money on iReady this year than what was originally allotted to us to spend. We are spending less. Yes, ma'am. We reduced it by $12,000.
And this new contract, is it for 3 years or 1 year? Like, what's the new contract?
It's also a 3-year contract.
Okay.
Yes. And we will continue. That way we use a lot of these programs over and over and over. And it's just a lot of time and a lot of your time and everybody else's time to do the same thing that we did the year before and the year before. It's a working program. And of course, we want to continue that use. So yes, we are trying to go to a 3-year contract kind of plan with all of our contracts across the district and getting them aligned to our calendar as well, so that they're not all spread out all across every month, multiple things coming due, and it's just an alignment. What are we spending? What does our budget look like? And a start and stop time on our contracts will make life easier for everybody, including this committee.
Okay. And this was for information only, just to let us know that you renegotiated the contract.
Yes, ma'am.
And saved us money.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank
We don't
you.
always come to you to ask for money. We take some off of there too once in a while.
Thank you very
So, yes.
much. Good stuff. So that brings us to our next meeting date, which will be September 27th, I believe at 9 a.m. here at the PDC.
Ms. Mayor,
Yes.
we have a grant through SPCC that I believe, I'm sorry, was supposed to be added on here.
We did not.
And this is believe you have the
Should
information.
we motion to amend, do we need to amend the agenda to add this on there?
I'll make a motion to amend our agenda to add the item SPCC grant,
North Carolina Career Coaches Grant.
North Carolina Career Coaches Grant.
And this was SPCC?
Yes. They are the ones completing the grant, and we are a partner with them because they're going to be putting individuals in our schools.
And it's two positions?
it is going to be currently, the grant is for one position, but I will explain the grant's starting next year, actually, when the position, if I can, I'll just go into what it is.
Well, let me add it to the agenda first.
Okay, sorry.
We'll add that as, I will offer that as item 11, and then we'll move adjournment down to item 12. I'll make that motion to amend the agenda.
Okay. And I need a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
The North Carolina Career Coaches Grant. Last night, yesterday evening, we were approached by SBCC for a last minute grant that came across their desk, and they called myself and I asked Mr. Filter, Robert Filter, to join me as our CTE director in talking with SBCC. This is a career coaches grant for one person to be in our schools, stationed at an individual school, but working with multiple schools, 2 to 4 schools across the district, and basically helping students and coaching students on career options for them. It is a grant through community colleges because I believe that the community colleges are seeing this as a way for them. If a student wants a career, it is a way for a student to look at, okay, what is the best pathway for that career, and where can I get the education for that career? Do I need a 4-year education, or do I need a 2-year degree at a community college? Will it get me to the same place for that job? And I believe that that's why that grant was put out there by North Carolina on behalf of our community colleges. And the way it works is, if South Piedmont Community College is awarded this grant, South Piedmont Community College will agree to pay 50% of the total cost for this individual, with their salary, all the benefits, and all of that. And then the grant picks up the other half. So South Piedmont Community College is agreeing to pay close to $40,000 for an individual to place into our schools to coach students on career pathways. We all like the idea of our counselors working with students and doing that, but we also know that that's not always meeting all of our students' needs at any given time. Students may have to wait and come back at another time. And this is an individual who could be placed in a school and work with multiple schools to get information out to students, to meet with students, and to just help students find clarity on what they want to do, what they're excited about doing. And so it's adding in another adult who is knowledgeable about careers in North Carolina, careers in society in general, and helping students navigate those waters. Also, setting up evening workshops with parents, just doing any of those community events that we could have at multiple schools. This person would manage all of that and help bring that to maybe some schools that don't have those additional resources. So when we look at schools, we are looking primarily at a more comprehensive school that may not have those additional resources already. We have Davidson College is already working within our schools in the Monroe cluster and Forest Hills cluster. So what are the other schools that don't have these individuals that I've reached out and to support, and like Sun Valley or Porter Ridge, even Parkwood, trying to get that belt there across the district and working with those students. So this will have no cost to Union County Public Schools other than an office space somewhere, wherever we choose to put this individual. And it is totally funded through SPCC and the grant. It doesn't start until the 1920 school year, and it's for a 3-year period. So what does that mean for us today? Well, through SPCC, they have set aside money to fund a part-time position to start this year right now, if we so choose to bring on this individual to go ahead and start this process. So in essence, having 4 years with an individual to work within our schools. They have enough money now for part-time, but the grant would take over the following year to go full-time with an individual. And once again, no cost to Union County Public Schools. Mr. Filter, am I missing, you want to add?
No,
some
you,
other-
you covered it pretty well. I think the only other, item that we're responsible for is a technology device for that counselor. So I think we have to provide a computer for them and an office. But other than that, everything is funded through SBCC and the grant.
And if they're having to travel from school to school to school, will they be using their own vehicle or a UCPS vehicle or?
I would imagine they will be using their own vehicle, and the mileage in that, while that would be worked out with SPCC
Okay.
of going back and forth. According to SPCC, this is not going to cost Union County Public Schools anything other than borrowing the laptop and then the office space.
Okay, got it.
So they're going to do the actual grant application. We
Yes,
just,
sir.
okay, so are you looking for approval basically to move forward with the process and implement the part-time position immediately? Is that?
Yes,
Well, it's
according,
their part-time
it's their
position.
part-time.
Their
Yeah, well,
part-time position.
accepting
We're
the
just
services
agreeing
of the part-time
We're
There's
just
an-
position.
agreeing
Yeah,
to office space and possibly a laptop.
Yeah, there's a memorandum of understanding that we will have to sign in order.
So you want to approve the memorandum of understanding, basically?
Do we need to bring this to the full board for approval? I guess that's my question, because the board chair will have to sign the MO.
Well, let me make it a suggestion that we approve it right here, the MOA, and then put the MOA on the consent agenda and grease it through. Is that,
Yes, we do.
we will, but it'll be on the
It'll
consent
be on the
agenda.
consent agenda.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the sole source stuff will be.
I'll make a motion to recommend to the full board for the consent agenda, the acceptance of the memorandum of understanding with SPCC for this career coaching position. Oh, okay.
Okay, all those in favor say aye. Okay, motion passes. We'll take it to next
Thank you.
week.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so if I've kept up with all that, we've addressed our next meeting date, and I think we are able to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Thank you.